Chapter 741 The Threshold of a Divine Artifact Forger. Ruoji brought Zhou to a spatial teleportation array, and was about to leave when he saw a figure rushing over from behind. It was Yuling. Don't you want to talk to His Majesty for a while? Zhou was stunned. I wanted to come over and help. Yuling blushed slightly and said naturally. Zhou nodded. He did not activate high-level telepathy at all times to sense the thoughts of others. It was a little disrespectful after all. Furthermore, if he was discovered by an expert, it was very easy to offend him. Therefore, Zhou did not know what Yuling was thinking. He did not think too much about it, and entered the spatial teleportation array with Yuling. The spatial teleportation array flashed. Zhou and the others disappeared. Divine Craftsman City. The Divine Craftsman City was an epic tier territory. It was extremely vast. When Zhou and the others appeared, the first thing they saw was a huge yellow gold tier hammer that was more than 3,000 meters tall. It stood in the middle of the city. Then, they heard the clamor of war that seemed to reverberate in their ears, as well as the sound of iron striking. They looked over. The shops on both sides of the street were either blacksmith shops, carpenter shops, tailor shops, war machinery shops, flying sword shops, and so on. In the distance he could see mines, metallurgical factories, and other medium-sized factories. Apart from the fact that the architectural style was a little immortal-like, Zhou even felt as if he had arrived at an industrial city. The three of them simply registered with the soldiers beside the spatial teleportation array. After confirming that they were not spies, the three of them were invited to the city wall by a deputy general who had rushed over. On the city wall, Zhou and the others looked at the battlefield. Then, Ruoji's expression turned serious, and Yuling was even more shocked. On the battlefield outside the city wall, the army of fog monsters that covered the sky and the earth was continuously attacking the city wall and the array barrier in the sky. The battle between the human soldiers and the fog monster army continued. A large number of soldiers were dying or injured every moment. The air was filled with the strong smell of blood that was like rust. All he could see was blood. From a third-person perspective, at this moment, the Divine Craftsman City was like a victim surrounded by thousands of killer bees. It even looked a little terrifying. The Divine Craftsman City is currently besieged by the Jidu Scarlet Legion of the Jidu Scarlet Empire. The Divine Craftsman City is currently besieged by the Jidu Scarlet Legion of the Jidu Scarlet Empire. With such a large number of Scarlet Army soldiers, if it weren't for the fact that our Divine Craftsman City usually accumulates a lot of war weapons, I'm afraid we would have been occupied and slaughtered by these bastards. The Deputy General's expression was somewhat bitter. Ruoji knew that the other party was asking the Empire for reinforcements, but how could the Empire have extra troops to support them now? Therefore, he could only pretend not to understand and introduce Zhou to her with a smile. I see. But we're not just here to inspect the war. Do you see this young hero beside me? He's the king of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. You should have heard of his name long ago, right? We came here this time because this king of the Blazing Sun took the initiative to suggest that we come over to help. The general was stunned. Then, she looked at Zhou in a daze. King of the Blazing Sun? The human lord who snatched the strongest lord of all races from the hands of many top-notch lords? He said in disbelief. Exactly. Ruoji nodded proudly. After a moment of silence, the general suddenly turned around and ran away. The three of them slowly typed out a question mark. What was going on? Why was he running? The deputy general returned and brought an old man with pale hair and a golden hammer on his back. I'm Tai Lian, the city lord of the Divine Craftsman City. Greetings to the warlock Luo and the king of the Blazing Sun. Even though Tai Lian was old, he was very polite to Ruoji and Zhou. So it's City Lord Tai. It's an honor to meet you. Ruoji greeted Zhou telepathically. This City Lord Iron is a legendary tier advanced grade blacksmith and a legendary tier advanced grade strongman. It can be said that he has already reached the peak of mortals in terms of life profession and combat classes. However, his dream is to become a divine artifact forger. So before he found the inheritance of a divine artifact forger, he had no way to advance. Until now, He is still comprehending the secrets of the profession of a divine artifact forger. What a pity! If only our divine sword empire had the inheritance of a divine artifact forger. Otherwise, he might have become a divine artifact forger by now. Ruoji sighed. A divine artifact forger. Zhou pondered. Thanks to the bloodline inheritance in his mind, he had some understanding of this god-tier profession. The requirements to change professions to become a divine artifact forger were very high. First, he had to have the complete inheritance of the divine artifact forger profession. Secondly, a blacksmith had to be a legendary tier advanced grade, and was only a step away from god tier. Thirdly, the blacksmith had to have a god tier strength type combat profession. The three conditions combined into one. Only then would it be possible to create a basic divine artifact forgers. And if he wanted to become a brilliant divine artifact forgers, he still had a long way to go. It could be seen how difficult it was to become a divine artifact forgers. Even for Zhou. Right now he only had a few forging blueprints at the level of a low-tier divine artifact. They were all legendary tier weapon forging blueprints, carried by a few legendary level enemy blacksmiths. In the end, they were killed by his soldiers in the war, and dropped higher tier divine artifact forging blueprints. Zhou was not interested in these blueprints. After all, the low-tier deity level god divine artifacts in his hands were almost piled up into a small mountain. Who cared about a few low-tier deity level divine artifact blueprints? He casually threw it into the king's treasure box, preparing to use it after obtaining the complete inheritance of the divine artifact forgers. And at the moment, these blueprints were also difficult for Tai Lian to become a divine artifact forgers. It was like giving a university student a research thesis at the academician level. It was not enough to explain the scientific and technical knowledge contained in a university student's thesis power to make a university student immediately become an academician. There was too much basic professional knowledge in it. It wasn't something that could be made up for with just a divine artifact blueprint. So it's City Lord Tai. It's an honor to meet you. Zhou said politely. The King of the Blazing Sun actually knows about me? Tai Lian looked at Zhou in surprise. Zhou was about to think of a response when he saw Tai Lian shake his head and say, "But that's not important anymore. King of the Blazing Sun, you just said that you wanted to come to my place to help. I wonder how many troops you brought." To be honest, King of the Blazing Sun, our divine craftsman city is in imminent danger. We urgently need external reinforcements. Tai Lian looked at Zhou expectantly. I'm alone. Zhou pondered for a second before saying honestly. Tai Lian was stunned. Then he could not help but look disappointed. He was already old, but now, he seemed to have aged dozens of years. Thank you for coming to help, King of the Blazing Sun. This decrepit still has things to do, so I'm not worthy of all of you. King of the Blazing Sun, if you want to do anything, feel free to do so. Tai Lian forced a smile. Then he turned around and left. Zhou was speechless. Did this person think that this is above my pay grade? Now that the Divine Craftsman City is in deep danger, City Lord Iron has a heavy burden on his shoulders. He has a lot of matters to deal with at all times. King of the Blazing Sun, please don't blame him. Ruoji quickly tried to salvage the situation. How come? Zhou shook his head. I'm going to help the Divine Craftsman City now. I'll be back soon. It won't take too long for the two of you to wait here. He continued. Don't you need a soldier to help you? Ruoji was stunned for a moment before asking. No need. Zhou shook his head. Ruoji looked hesitant. Lord Ruoji, it's fine as long as we believe in the King of the Blazing Sun. For King of the Blazing Sun to be able to reach this point, how can he be a rash person? He definitely has his own confidence and means. At this moment, Yuling suddenly said. Ruoji was stunned for a moment before nodding. Well, he had worried for nothing. Zhou looked at Yuling in surprise and nodded. Then, without hesitation, he flew into the sky and stood inside the array barrier. Chapter 742 The Upper Limit of Insight Defection. Leaving, Zhou scanned the area a few times and quickly found a target. It was a ferocious yiksha with purple-black skin, a golden steel fork in his hand, and a pair of fangs. He emitted the aura of a low-tier deity-level elementary-grade Scarlet God Spirit, and was fighting another Sword Immortal of the Divine Craftsman City. The Sword Immortal's face was pale, and the aura on his body was a little unstable. The 9 flying swords surrounding him were also swaying. It was obvious that he had fought too many battles, and had consumed too much divine sense and magic power. On the other hand, the Wuxia Scarlet God Spirit looked full of energy, and had powerful magic power. It was completely suppressing the Sword Immortal of Divine Craftsman City. "I'll choose you." He took out the Sword of New Dimension Creation, and held it in his hand. He condensed the legendary tier elementary grade Chaos Origin power in his body, and activated the Myriad Sword Immortal formation, before slashing at the other party. Yes, he felt that the chaotic origin power in his body had already advanced to another level, and broke through to the legendary tier elementary grade, just after he summoned Gerard to kill the mid-tier deity-level Chilean dragon race Scarlet God Spirit. At this realm, he could already barely use the true God-tier divine artifacts, the Sword of New Dimension Creation, to launch his attack. Of course, that was all. If he wanted to use the divine artifact law ability in the Sword of New Dimension Creation, it was far from enough. At the very least, he had to advance to the low-tier deity level, or even the mid-tier deity level, before he could use the divine artifact law ability of the Sword of New Dimension Creation. On the other side, facing this sudden attack, this low-tier deity-level elementary grade Wuxia Scarlet God Spirit could not react at all, and was directly beheaded. The Sword Cultivator was stunned when he saw this. Could it be reinforcements from the Empire? He thought in surprise. Then he hurriedly turned around and looked at Zhou, who had put down the Sword of New Dimension Creation. The Sword Immortal's eyes were blank. As the worshipped God Spirit of the Divine Sword Empire, he knew the other God Spirits of the Divine Sword Empire. However, he had never seen the young man in front of him before. What was going on? Who was he? On the other side, Zhou was also a little surprised to see that he had actually killed a low-level low-tier deity Scarlet God Spirit with one strike. His original intention was to injure the other party, and take the opportunity to use his insight defection. He did not expect it to be accidentally killed. Zhou smacked his lips, very satisfied with his strength. Of course, he was most satisfied with the power of the Sword of New Dimension Creation, as expected of true God-tier divine artifacts. Now that he could use this Sword of New Dimension Creation, his combat strength should be comparable to most mid-tier deity-level God Spirits. If he was facing a high-tier deity-level God Spirit, even if he could not defeat them, he could still escape. At the thought of this, a smile appeared on Zhou's face. Then, he did not waste any time. He first retrieved the corpse of the killed Scarlet God Spirit, and placed it beside the corpse of the other Scarlet Dragon God Spirit in the king's treasure box. Then, he raised his right hand, and willed while the enemy's morale was affected after killing a Scarlet God Spirit. Extraordinary Tier Lord Talent, Insight Defection, activate. The next second, an invisible fluctuation instantly covered the 230 million Scarlet Fog monsters. A text notification appeared. Prompt: you have activated your Lord exclusive talent, Insight Defection. Insight Defection has taken effect. Lord Talent Notification. A total of 20,489,965 Black Iron Tier Fog monsters, 13,359,810 Green Bronze Tier Fog monsters, 8,165,985 White Silver Tier Fog monsters, 5,426,521 Yellow Gold Tier Fog monsters, 2,284,453 White Platinum Tier Fog monsters, 202,187 Diamond Tier Fog monsters, 68,741 Extraordinary Tier Fog monsters, 6,187 Epic Tier Fog monsters, 151 Legendary Tier Fog monsters have betrayed their Lord faction and become your loyal subordinates. Zhou looked at the Insight Defection result and smiled. There were a total of 50 million fog monsters. It directly reached the upper limit of the number of Insight Defections for Extraordinary Tier Insight Defection. This was the first time he had Insight Defection, which had reached the upper limit of his lord talent. Normally, how can there be so many fog monsters gathered together to make me incite defection? It was just as he thought. This King of 10,000 Kings event is both a calamity and an unimaginable opportunity for me. Zhou eyes lit up. After that, he secretly released a galaxy that had entered the spatial concealment state. At the same time, he secretly ordered the fog monsters of the 50 million incite defection to quietly withdraw from the current battlefield and enter the galaxy to hide. When the time comes, Zhou put the galaxy into his internal world again, and the 50 million fog monster soldiers could safely and smoothly reach his hands. Then, Zhou flew down from the sky and landed beside Ruoji and Yuling. As soon as he came down, the two of them leaned over and looked at Zhou with burning eyes. Especially Ruoji. At this moment, this strategist looked at Zhou as if he was seeing a resplendent jade. The King of the Blazing Sun's attack is indeed extraordinary. He actually killed a low-tier deity Scarlet God Spirit with a single strike as a legendary tier. In time, King of the Blazing Sun, you will definitely become a pillar of our human race. He praised sincerely. With the strength of a legendary tier elementary grade, he killed a low-tier deity Scarlet God Spirit with a single strike. This child's future could no longer be described as only limitless. Even if he could not become the lord of all races in the future, his strength alone was enough for him to occupy the upper echelons of the human race. He might even be able to become an achievement true god tier, and become a pillar of the human race like Bai He and Lu Yan. At the same time, he was an expert that all races had to respect. You flatter me, Zhou said humbly. You two get ready. We can leave in a while. You're leaving just like that. Well, I guess you can indeed leave after killing a low-tier deity Scarlet God Spirit. Ruoji was stunned for a moment before nodding thoughtfully. He felt a little regretful that he did not see more of this lord's battle scenes. But at this moment, Yuling exclaimed in surprise. This battlefield, why do I feel that the attack of this fog monster army has suddenly become much weaker? She said uncertainly. Ruoji was stunned. Then, he immediately looked over and saw what Yuling was talking about. However, as a strategist who had experienced many war scenes, his observation skills were much more detailed than Yuling's. Therefore, he quickly saw through more things. Not only is it much weaker, but it's nearly a quarter weaker. Moreover, there's something wrong with this fog monster army. Why do I feel that there are fewer and fewer of them? Ruoji was stunned. In his life, he had experienced tens of thousands of battlefields of all sizes. However, he had never seen such a strange battlefield situation. Then, they suddenly thought of something and looked at Zhou in disbelief. Zhou, is that your doing? Yuling asked in surprise and anticipation. Ruoji also stared intently at Zhou. It's just some small tricks. But that's all I can do today. If these fog monsters in the Divine Craftsman City increase tomorrow, it'll come again. Zhou did not explain further. However, this made the two of them look at Zhou even more fanatically. Ruoji took a deep breath and decided to tell His Majesty what he had seen and heard on this trip when he returned, so that His Majesty would value this King of the Blazing Sun even more. He looked at the celestial appearance Zhou and had a premonition. If the Divine Sword Empire could establish a stable friendship with the King of the Blazing Sun, and even borrow the power of this King of the Blazing Sun, then their Divine Sword Empire might be able to advance to a higher level, and even do something that the human race could only dream of. It sounded a little ridiculous for an empire to want to borrow the power of a beginner kingdom king. However, Ruoji firmly believed in his intuition. After that, Zhou retracted the galaxy in spatial concealment, and the 50 million fog monster army inside. Right on the heels of that, they told the deputy general, and asked him to inform City Lord Tai Lian that they had left. Then they entered the spatial teleportation array and left. Zhou still had a lot of things to do, and could not stay here any longer. When Tai Lian rushed over, he only saw an empty spatial teleportation array. Seeing this, Tai Lian hurriedly asked the soldiers guarding the spatial teleportation array. After knowing that Zhou and the others had left, he stood on the spot in a daze for a while. Then he bowed deeply to the spatial teleportation array. He did not get up for a long time. Chapter 743 The Law Skill. Zhou once when Zhou and the others returned to the capital and wanted to meet Lu Zhen. They were informed by a servant that Lu Zhen was dealing with government affairs in the Pure Yang Hall. At that moment, he would not receive anyone. If that's the case, why don't we return to the Blazing Sun Kingdom first? Lord Ruoji, please inform His Majesty that we've returned when he's free. Zhou thought for a moment and said, "Don't you want to stay for a while?" Ruoji hurriedly urged him to stay. He still wanted to keep her in the palace for a period of time, to nurture the friendship between the two countries. This King of 10,000 Kings event will only last for a month. I can't stay any longer. Zhou shook his head. Since he had already given this reason, Ruoji could not say anything. He could only watch as Zhou and Yuling left the palace through the spatial teleportation array. Then, Ruoji turned around and walked deeper into the palace. After Zhou and Yuling returned to the Night Empire, the two of them separated. Then, Zhou directly returned to the Blazing Sun Kingdom. After returning to the capital, Zhou first took out the corpse of the mid-tier deity-level Qilin Dragon God Spirit and the corpse of the low-tier Yiksha Scarlet God Spirit, intending to see what the spoils of war of the two Scarlet God Spirits were like. However, it was a pity that the most valuable loots on these two Scarlet God Spirits were only two low-tier deity-level elementary-grade divine artifacts. After extracting them, they became 6 mid-tier deity-level divine artifacts. Among the other important spoils of war, Zhou put away the divine crystals for himself. As for the other 2 mid-tier deity-level Book of the God Spirit and Secret Manual of the Hero Inheritance, Zhou directly placed them in the military merit exchange system for the soldiers who had performed the most outstandingly in the war. Then, he entered the cultivation room and continued to comprehend the Lord's laws. Time passed quickly. Night covered the earth in the blink of an eye. The scarlet fog descended. In the cultivation room, Zhou opened his eyes. His expression was thoughtful as he played with the Bodhi Supreme in his hand. I'm already a legendary tier elementary grade now. I'm not far from becoming a legendary tier advanced grade and becoming a god spirit. With the enhancement of my Lord talent, I should be able to reach the threshold of becoming a low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirit in less than 10 days. But I still feel that my comprehension of Lord's law is still far inferior. Zhou frowned slightly. He had not even fully comprehended the Lord's law behind the Black Iron tier Lord talent, Hand of Wealth. Not to mention, he had comprehended the most important and core Lord law skill. He had a feeling that he had to achieve the God Spirit slot with the Lord Law skill. Only then could he truly step onto the path of the Supreme God Spirit. He had to achieve the Achievement God Spirit slot with the Lord Law skill. Only then could he truly step onto the path of the Supreme God Spirit. Zhou was deep in thought. Then he suddenly thought of something and opened his Lord Talent list. His gaze swept across these Lord Talents one by one, and finally landed on the mythical tier Unique Lord Talent. Lord Shop and another mythical tier Unique Lord Talent, Ultimate Algorithm. These 2 Lord Talents are the closest to the Lord Talent of ruling among all my Lord Talents. The former can allow me, a Lord, to have the power to rule other subjects, bloodlines, and even items. The latter can allow me to rule all the computational power of the Machina race. If I can comprehend the Lord laws behind these 2 Lord Talents, I will definitely be able to see the true meaning of ruling from them and master a control-type law skill. But the grades of these 2 Lord Talents are too high. The Lord laws contained in them are too complicated. I can't comprehend them. Zhou smiled bitterly. For the first time, he felt that the quality of the Lord Talent was too high. It was also a burden. If other lords heard this, they would probably scold him for not knowing the hunger of a hungry man. But it was indeed his true thoughts at this moment. What should I do? Zhou pondered. Then, his gaze slowly landed on the Bodhi Supreme in his hand. Bodhi Supreme? A fawning smile appeared on his face. What? Bodhi Supreme seemed to have seen the expression on his face, and said warily, Can you help me resolve my confusion? I can't. The Bodhi Supreme rejected Zhou directly before he could finish speaking. If you want me to clear your doubts again, you have to pay off the debt first, and then give me enough knowledge to clear your doubts before I can help you. Bodhi Supreme snorted. That will take a few days. Zhou was helpless. Just a few days and you can't wait? Bodhi Supreme asked. In planning ahead. Zhou gradually fell silent. He did seem to be a little too anxious. In any case, he was still a long way from becoming a legendary tier advanced grade. Why was he in such a hurry? He suddenly became vigilant. It seemed that his life had been too smooth sailing. Now that he had encountered a little obstruction, he actually became a little anxious. That wouldn't do. He took a deep breath and looked at the Bodhi Supreme in his hand. I was in too much of a hurry. All right. I'll keep instilling the bloodline inheritance in your mind for the next 2 days, until it's enough for you to clear my doubts. That's more like it. Bodhi Supreme was satisfied. In its eyes, this lord that had yet to mature still had many shortcomings. However, at the very least, he knew his limits and would correct his mistakes in time. He can be molded. Most importantly, the talent of the Lord's law was shockingly high. In short, his future is promising. I am with the right person, the Bodhi Supreme thought to itself. After that, Zhou did not waste any time, and directly began to instill the bloodline inheritance he had grasped into Bodhi Supreme. A moment later, Zhou, who was instilling his bloodline inheritance into Bodhi Supreme, suddenly heard a knock on the door. Your Majesty, Legion Commander Bai Yun and the rest have returned. Currently, Legion Commander Bai Yun is requesting an audience outside the door. Aaliyah's voice sounded. Let her in. Zhou said casually. Yes, Your Majesty. Aaliyah left. Seeing this, Zhou also stopped instilling bloodline inheritance and said to Bodhi Supreme, I'm a little tired today. Let's continue tomorrow. Sure. At this rate, you should be able to completely repay the debt you owe me and save up enough to officially resolve your doubts in another 2 or 3 days. Bodhi Supreme was also very satisfied with today's gains. At this moment, Your Majesty, Bai Yun requests an audience. Bai Yun's voice came from outside the door. Come in. Zhou put away the Bodhi Supreme and said. Soon Bai Yun walked in. Greetings, Your Majesty, she said respectfully. How is it? Have you captured all the spatial teleportation arrays? Zhou asked casually. Everything went well. They've all been captured. We originally encountered 2 low-tier deity-level Scarlet God spirits along the way and wanted to stop us, but they were repelled by Qi Xiantian and the others. Bai Yin reported. Zhou nodded. With this spatial teleportation array that completely connected the 2 human empires, his faction quests could be considered to have been completed, even though he had already received the mission reward in advance. Chapter 744 War Summary, Your Majesty. Deputy Commander Wu has already led all the new recruits back. Furthermore, our soldiers have already passed through the Triumphal Arch once. I have already recorded the advancement of all the soldiers and the gains of the loots. Please take a look, Your Majesty. After Bai Yun finished speaking, she took out a list of battles from her spatial ring and handed it to Zhou. Zhou took it and looked at it. Today, they had killed a total of 320 million fog monsters. Among them, Bai Yun and the rest led more than 400 million soldiers. In the process of seizing the spatial teleportation array to the Divine Sword Empire, they eliminated a total of 110 million fog monsters along the way. On the other hand, Wuxia led 100 million veterans and 720 million new recruits to kill a total of 210 million fog monsters in a day around the territory of the Night Empire. It sounded like an exaggeration, but if one counted every soldier, they would realize that some soldiers might not even have killed a single fog monster in a day. At most, they would help each other and share the promotion energy obtained from killing a fog monster with a few soldiers. Zhou smacked his lips. No wonder Yuling said that the situation on the battlefield had improved a lot with the help of his soldiers. Over the past 2 days, the recruits under him had killed almost 300 million fog monsters. There were only about 1 billion fog monsters attacking the Night Empire. Now that 3/10 of it was gone, wouldn't the pressure be relieved a lot? He didn't think too much about it, and continued reading. With the enhancement of the King of Lutes, and the title of the strongest lord, they obtained a total of more than 11,000 low-tier deity-level divine crystals, 1,061,300 legendary tier mist cores, 10,629,600 epic tier mist cores, 121 million extraordinary tier mist cores, 165 million diamond tier mist cores, 369 million white platinum tier mist cores, 682 million yellow gold tier mist cores, 1,412 million white silver tier mist cores, 2,836 million green bronze tier mist cores, more than 12,050 million skill books, and 15,012 million equipment, more than 9,000 low-tier deity-level divine artifacts. Basic materials: 3,600 million 9,900 units. More than 40 million units of basic elemental gem resources. There were more than 2 million units of thunder element gems. More than 3 million units of life elemental gems. More than 1 million units of death elemental gems. 12 million origin crystals. 245,672 green bronze tier, Lord Talent crystal fragments. 212 Holy Spirit tier scarlet divine crystals. 514 low tier deity level Book of the God Spirit. 35 hero inheritance secret manuals. Then, in terms of the increase in the combat strength of the soldiers, the total number and strength of Zhou soldiers had also increased greatly throughout the day. Other than his own Insight Defection army of 63,321,943 fog monsters, the 20% Insight Defection troops handed over to him by the Lords of the Star Alliance had also reached 6,222,890 fog monsters. All three of them added up to a total of 69,544,833 fog monsters. And now, excluding the troops of the Star Alliance, the total number of troops under Zhou's command had already reached 1,322,074,382 soldiers. Among them were 35,499,341 black iron tier soldiers, 19,158,710 green bronze tier soldiers, 676. 3 million white silver tier soldiers, 360,079,010 yellow gold tier soldiers, 196,331,700 white platinum tier soldiers, 28,355,439 diamond tier soldiers, 6,108,413 extraordinary tier soldiers, 254,100 epic tier soldiers, and 599 legendary tier soldiers. In addition, Dragon Horse Spear General, Wu Xian and Ghost God General, Luo Sheng had broken through to the legendary tier advanced grade. Soul Arrow, Wu Tu had broken through to legendary tier intermediate grade. The original spirit race, Ansel had broken through to epic tier intermediate grade. The other heroes and generals had also improved greatly in terms of strength. Zhou looked at the list and nodded slightly. When he saw the distribution of strength among the last soldiers, he could not help but be speechless. Among the soldiers under his command, there were hundreds of millions of white silver tier, yellow gold tier, and white platinum tier soldiers. On the other hand, there were a lot fewer soldiers at the other levels of strength. Zhou was well aware of the reason for this. He had recruited too many new recruits in the past 2 days. However, with the epic tier blessing of the war god, these soldiers' strength increased rapidly. This resulted in the number of white silver tier, yellow gold tier, and white platinum tier soldiers under him being so much more than the soldiers at other levels. It doesn't matter how many new recruits there are. Under the blessing of the war god, it won't be long before these new recruits become the high-end combat power under my command. Zhou's lips curled up slightly. The Lords of the Star Alliance now have a total of more than 65 million troops. In addition to the soldiers I have now, I now have more than 587 million soldiers under my command. He nodded, then returned the list of battles to Bai Yun. I've already placed the Hero Inheritance and Book of the God Spirit in the military merit exchange system. Remember to find someone to discuss, and reward them to the soldiers who perform the most outstandingly and need them the most. Zhou said. Yes, Your Majesty. Bai Yun said respectfully before continuing. Your Majesty, I have something to tell you. What is it? Deputy Commander Wu told me just now. It's too obvious that we've been killing fog monsters around the Night Empire to train our troops these past 2 days. Currently, there are already at least 3 Empire-level fog monster army and 40 Kingdom-level fog monster army that are stirring up trouble with our Blazing Sun Kingdom. I reckon that they will take revenge on our Blazing Sun Kingdom soon. I understand. Zhou fell into deep thought. This was within his expectations. After all, these fog monsters were not wooden figures. If he trained his soldiers so wantonly and used their lives to train his soldiers, he would definitely attract their counterattack. However, Zhou was not afraid. Ability. It was the reason why he dared to do this. He had already killed one of the Empire-level monster army. The current him. His strength had increased greatly again. Even if a few more Empire-level monster army came, he would not be afraid. Oh yes. How many heroes does our Blazing Sun Kingdom have now? He suddenly asked. Currently, there are a total of 68 heroes in our 4 legions who hold various important positions within the legion. If we distribute the hero inheritance manual that we obtained today, and let the contributing soldiers accept these hero inheritances, our Sun Kingdom will have 105 heroes. Bai Yin said. When Zhou heard this, a smile appeared on his face again. 105 heroes. This number had already exceeded 100. If this was placed on some small races, it would probably be equivalent to the number of heroes in their race. But now, it was only the number of heroes in his small beginner kingdom. If news of this got out, who knew how many life forms would call it ridiculous? Now, Zhou was even more confident in dealing with the monster army that wanted to take revenge on him. Your Majesty, Legion Commander Wu Tu requests an audience. Aaliyah's voice came from outside. After Zhou let the other party in, Wu Tu quickly came over. Greetings, Your Majesty. Wu Tu said respectfully. What is it? Your Majesty, I've already sorted out all the information on the 16 enemy countries that you asked me to sort out previously. Also, His Majesty asked me to investigate the 5 scarlet monsters that the Supreme Will detests. I've already investigated 2 of them today. Your Majesty, please take a look. With that, Wu Tu opened his personal terminal and sent an intelligence report to Zhou. When Zhou saw this, he opened his personal terminal and found the information Wu Tu had sent him. Then, he projected the information into the air so that everyone present could see it. Chapter 745 Alliance of the 16 Kings. Carlos Castro, Zhou, Bai Yun, and Wu Tu looked at the virtual image projected in the air in front of them. At the top was the information on the 16 people of foreign races. Zhou looked at it, which was recorded in this intelligence information. These 16 enemy countries now had a total of about 56 million troops. They had even formed an alliance called the 16 Kings Alliance. As for who this alliance was guarding against, it was clearly written on it. It was his Blazing Sun Kingdom. Your Majesty, actually, when the alliance of 16 kings was first established, it only had about 35 million troops. However, they might have heard of our Blazing Sun Kingdom's reputation during this period of time, and were so frightened that they hurriedly went all out in the country. They forced most of the superhumans and subjects in the country to enlist. Only then were they barely able to gather more than 56 million soldiers. Nonetheless, since it's a compulsory recruitment, most of these recruits are very weak. Only a small number of recruits who are combat professionals are slightly stronger. However, because most of them don't have any combat experience in the army, their strength isn't comparable to the military professionals. Wu Tu said, military professionals were better at performing on the battlefield because of their profession characteristics. Therefore, on the battlefield, military professionals usually performed better than combat professionals. However, if it was a 1v1 battle outside the battlefield, then combat professionals could often defeat military professionals of the same level. This was also the biggest difference between military professionals and combat professionals. Zhou nodded. He looked into Bai Yun's eyes and understood what she meant. He could not help but laugh. There were more than 56 million soldiers. In the past, they would probably think that the other party was very strong. But what was 56 million soldiers for him, who had nearly 1 billion soldiers? He managed to obtain this amount of soldiers just by one activation of insight defection. I'll leave it to you, Bai Yun. Tomorrow, I want to see the territories of these 16 kingdoms, filled with the flags of our blazing sun kingdom. Zhou said in a low voice. Yes, Your Majesty, Bai Yun said respectfully. There was no hesitation in her voice. Capture 16 kingdoms in a day. Bai Yun's eyes were filled with anticipation. She had only heard such stories in myths and legends when she was young. At that time she felt that a general who could do such a thing must be a great hero, who could support the heavens and the earth. He must be an extraordinary figure. She did not expect that she was going to do the same now. She took a small breath, and her eyes became determined. There was still a long way to go. This was only the beginning. It was far from enough to achieve 16 kingdoms in a day. If she wanted to sit firmly in the position of the #1 general beside His Majesty, there were too many outstanding talents by His Majesty's side. She had to become a general in myths and legends that was enough to be praised by all the life forms of the myriad races. She also has to be the most outstanding general in order to steadily become the #1 general beside His Majesty. Bai Yun thought to herself. Zhou did not know the change in Bai Yun's heart. After looking at the strength of the 16 kingdoms, and confirming that he could crush this so-called 16 Kings alliance, he looked directly at the 2 scarlet fog monsters that Wu Tu had found, and were hated by the Supreme Will. The first fog monster was named Garlos. According to the information, he was a low-tier deity-level elementary-grade god spirit from the Doro Crimson Empire. The other party was the deputy commander of an empire-level scarlet army in their empire. He was good at close combat, but other than that, he had no other characteristics. At this moment, the other party was following the empire-level scarlet army and besieging a human advanced kingdom called Tianze 6 billion kilometers away. The second fog monster was a fog monster named Castro. According to the information, the other party was originally a life form from the Heavenly King's boundless universe. Later on, the world he was in was invaded by the fog monster faction. At that time, he chose to fight for his world, but he was defeated and captured by the fog monster. Then, because of his extremely high talent, he was recognized by a big shot in the fog monster camp and transformed into a fog monster. However, Castro had an unyielding nature. He would not be able to change that even though he had transformed into a fog monster. Not long after, this guy actually defected from his camp and became a lone fog monster that roamed the high continent. This guy's original strength was low-tier deity-level elementary grade. After he defected and left, he took pleasure in challenging and killing experts of the same level on the high continent. Occasionally, he would even cross realms to fight. After such a long time, not only did he not die, he had even made a breakthrough in strength. Now, he had already become a mid-tier deity-level elementary grade scarlet god spirit. During the current calamity of the myriad races, the other party began to specially assassinate the god spirit level experts of the various empires in the high continent to weaken the combat strength of the lord-level forces of the high continent's empires. They attacked cities and territories in the high continent with the Scarlet Empire behind them. The results were quite fruitful. It was said that they had already captured one empire of the people of foreign races. He even said in this invitation, as a lone scarlet god spirit, Castro was not only extremely strong in frontal combat, he was also extremely good at escaping and hiding. This was also the reason why he had been able to roam freely in the high continent for so many years, without being successfully retaliated against by his enemies. Now the other party was appearing at a place 4 billion kilometers away, as if he wanted to attack the orc god spirit of a nearby orc empire. Then, Zhou opened the other information. In the end, with their reading speed, it took them more than half an hour to finish reading. After reading it, Zhou immediately looked at Wu Tuesday. "Where did you get all this information?" he asked in surprise. "Your Majesty, this is all thanks to the Dark Walker job change statue in our territory. Dark Walkers have the ability to create the Demon Concealment Ointment, and the Demon Concealment Ointment allows us to treat us as members of the Fog Monster Camp when we encounter fog monsters. That's why I have an idea. I order the soldiers of the Heavenly Map Army to disguise themselves as members of the Fog Monster Camp through the Demon Concealment Ointment when exploring the information of the Fog Monster faction. Then, they will take the opportunity to sneak into the Fog Monster Camp, greatly reducing the difficulty of spying. I obtained the information about these two fog monsters that are hated by the Supreme while using this method. Even though we encountered some small risks along the way, it's not worth mentioning compared to the value of the information we obtained." Wu Tu said, "I remember that the Demon Concealment Ointment only has a high chance of making the fog monsters treat us as members of the Fog Monster Camp, right?" Zhou frowned. Chapter 746 Second Generation Darkwalker Potion. Your Majesty, you're busy every day, so you may not know that ever since the Darkwalker statue, and let all the subjects in the territory change their profession to Darkwalker, the people from the Alchemy Union have begun to research the three profession secret medicines: the Darkwalker's Demon Vanquishing Powder, the Demon Concealment Ointment, and the Sacred Redemption Medicine. Then, they realized that if they increased the level and quality of the medicinal herbs used to make the Darkwalker secret medicine, and added some outstanding supplementary medicinal herbs, it could greatly increase the medicinal effect of the secret medicine. Just yesterday, two of these three potions, namely the Demon Concealment Ointment and the Sacred Redemption Medicine, have already been optimized by the alchemy pharmacists of the Alchemy Union. Among them, the second generation of Sacred Redemption Medicine can allow living beings that have been transformed into fog monsters for a period of time to return to their normal life form. And the Demon Concealment Ointment can already make the living beings smeared with the Demon Concealment Ointment have a 100% chance of being mistaken by the fog monsters as a member of the Fog Monster Camp. Unless the difference in strength between the living beings smeared with the Demon Concealment Ointment and the fog monsters they encounter exceeds a major level, they will definitely not be recognized. Wu Tu said respectfully. Zhou was stunned. There was actually such a thing. He thought for a moment, and suddenly remembered that Zheng Yuanqi had indeed sent him a document about the Alchemy Union yesterday. It was just that he had always been used to letting Zheng Yuanqi deal with the matters in the territory. In addition, it was not a major matter that endangered the territory, so he did not take a look. So that document was about this. Zhou understood why the alchemy professionals of the Alchemy Union had the ability to modify and increase the effect of the Darkwalker potion. The first batch of professionals of the Darkwalker were just ordinary life forms who were not even professionals. When the fog monster first descended, the medicinal herbs they could come into contact with were extremely limited. Under such conditions, the effect of the secret medicine they could create would naturally not be too high. However, with the resources Zhou had now and the rich potion knowledge of the high-level alchemy professionals of the Alchemy Union, he could naturally easily develop the Darkwalker secret medicine with stronger effects. In the future, as the research time increased, the various resources and conditions that Zhou had increased, and the profession level of the alchemy professionals in the Alchemy Union increased, it was not impossible for them to develop the Darkwalker secret medicine with a stronger effect. Well done. Zhou patted Wu Tu's shoulder and said with a smile, "Your Majesty, you flatter me. It's because the Darkwalker's potion is too useful. I've read many historical books, but this is the first time I've known of such a practical potion with such an effect. If these secret medicines could circulate throughout the entire High Continent when the Scarlet Fog first descended, perhaps the High Continent today would have become different." Wu Tu did not take the credit. Instead, he sighed about the effect of the Darkwalker's secret medicine. Zhou nodded. The effect of the Darkwalker's secret medicine was indeed ridiculously good. Then, He thought of something and opened Linger's chat to initiate a video call. Soon, Linger appeared on the other end of the video. Big brother. Linger looked at Zhou in surprise. Linger, how's the production of the Dark Walker's secret medicine recently? Zhou went straight to the point. When Linger heard that, she immediately said, Big brother, you asked me to buy 10 billion copies of the first-generation Dark Walker secret medicine last time. I've already bought them all. Currently, we have already made the first generation of the Dark Walker secret medicine an official quest. We have mobilized the subjects and organizations of the entire Blazing Sun Kingdom to make it. About 2 billion have been made so far. Also, yesterday, Prime Minister Zheng asked me to buy more medicinal herbs to make the second-generation Dark Walker secret medicine. I've also begun to buy them on the World Channel, the territory of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, and the territories of the Lords of the Star Alliance. However, because the medicinal herbs needed for the second-generation Dark Walker secret medicine are higher level, there aren't many medicinal herbs bought so far. I can only make about 300 million sets of the second-generation Dark Walker secret medicine. Linger was clearly very familiar with this business and said directly, How many Miss Cores did you spend in total? Zhou asked curiously. Each of the first-generation Dark Walker secret medicines only costs 5 Black Iron Tier Mist Cores. 10 billion copies of the first-generation Dark Walker secret medicine cost a total of 1,500 Legendary Tier Mist Cores. The second-generation Dark Walker secret medicine is more expensive. Each of them will cost 2 White Silver Tier Mist Cores. Therefore, a total of 1,800 Legendary Tier Mist Cores were spent on 300 million second-generation Dark Walker secret medicines. Linger said, So cheap. Zhou clicked his tongue in wonder and said generously, Then continue to buy. Buy as much as you can. In addition, if we can plant the medicinal herbs needed for these secret medicines ourselves, we can also focus on planting them. 10 billion might seem like a lot, but it was actually not much to split evenly with each soldier. Not to mention that she had only collected 300 million copies of the second generation of the Dark Walker secret medicine. It was not enough for his soldiers to share at all. Therefore, he still had to create a large number of Dark Walker secret medicines. Yes, Your Majesty. Yuling was a little surprised, but she did not ask further and nodded in agreement. Zhou did not chat further and closed the chat box. He looked thoughtful. Originally, he planned to sell the extra Dark Walker secret medicine to the Cerulean planet's human race, or even the entire human race, or even other Lord factions that fought against the fog monsters. The effect was such a good Dark Walker secret medicine, and the manufacturing cost was so low. A large number of factions would probably be willing to buy it, even if he increased the cost by a few times. When the time comes, he would obtain incomparably shocking profits. However, now, since his production capacity was limited, he could only give up on this idea for the time being and think about it in the future. After that, the three of them discussed the order in which they should deal with these two groups of enemies. Then, they quickly decided to follow the order of ease before difficulty. Tomorrow, they would deal with the 16 Kings Alliance first before dealing with the 2 fog monsters that the Supreme Resistance hated. They'll do it now. Bai Yin stood up and said. Then, she bade farewell to Zhou and left. Wu Tu also left quickly. Seeing this, Zhou went straight to the cultivation room and continued to comprehend the Lord Law behind the Hand of Wealth. Command-type law skills were only the beginning of becoming a Lord Law-type God Spirit. The Lord's Law behind the Hand of Wealth was also a part of the entire Lord's Law. Zhou would have to comprehend and master it sooner or later, so it was not a waste of time to master it in advance, as long as he did not use it as a nomological skill to become a god in the end. One of the 16 Kings Alliance, Ghost Darkness Kingdom, Spectre Palace. In a vast dark purple hall, 16 life forms emitting extraordinary tier and epic tier auras were gathered here. Some of them emitted the aura of the netherworld. Some had blazing flames burning on their bodies. Some were wearing royal robes with strange tower patterns. And some emitted the aura of witchcraft that made people not dare to approach. The auras they emitted were different, but they were all silent at this moment. No one spoke, making the already quiet hall even more deathly silent. If someone familiar with the life forms present was here, they would definitely be able to recognize immediately that the 16 life forms in different forms in the hall were the monarchs of the 16 countries that formed the 16 Kings Alliance. At this moment, they actually disregarded the past and gathered together. Chapter 747 Conspiracy After a Long Time. Have you heard the latest news about the Blazing Sun Kingdom? The king of the Fire Spirit Kingdom suddenly said, breaking the silence. I heard. This king is here for this. Speaking of which, is that news true? The king of the Rhoda Kingdom could not help but ask. If you're asking if the Blazing Sun Kingdom defeated an empire-level Scarlet Army from the Scarlet Empire yesterday, this king can say that it's true. The king of the Spiritual Insect Kingdom said hoarsely. That's not all. Just today I received the news. The king of the Blazing Sun led more than 800 million soldiers and severely injured the Fog Monster faction that besieged the Human Knight Empire. At least 200 million fog monsters died at the hands of the soldiers of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. The king of the Demon Soldier Kingdom said in a low voice. What? An army of more than 200 million fog monsters was destroyed in a day. That's impossible, right? Even a butcher can't kill them so quickly, right? What's so fast about killing 200 million with 800 million? Currently, fog monsters are everywhere in the entire high continent. Other than the fact that there are fewer fog monsters within the protection of the Lord's faction, which ownerless land outside the protection of the Lord's faction hasn't been occupied by fog monsters. Big brother? As long as the fog monsters are dense enough, it won't be strange for 800 million soldiers to kill 1 billion soldiers a day, let alone 200 million. The Blazing Sun Kingdom actually has more than 800 million soldiers. Then what's the point of establishing this alliance of 16 kings? We can just disband and surrender. It was true. As soon as these words were spoken, some of the monarchs of the 16 countries present were really tempted. This was because even though the king of the Blazing Sun was fierce and decisive to the enemy, and never left anyone alive, he treated his own people, even those who had just surrendered, as if they were from the same hometown. They wouldn't be treated as outsiders. He was willing to use everything good on his own people. The treatment was ridiculously good. When the people of foreign races heard this, they exclaimed that they wanted to change their nationality. Moreover, the king of the Blazing Sun liked to use the locals to govern the locals. Even the king of a defeated country had a high chance of continuing to be the king of his country after surrendering. It was just that the name had changed from king to governor, and the treatment and benefits had changed slightly from before. In other aspects, it was almost no different from before. Both the original king of the Aurora Kingdom and the original king of the Titan Kingdom had set a very good example on this point alone. At the thought of this, many of the kings present were even more tempted. However, they did not say it out loud. Instead, they were secretly observing the other monarchs. The king of the Blazing Sun is so strong. The more than 56 million of our 16 Kings Alliance is simply a joke to them. There's definitely no way out if we fight head-on. Do the kings have any other thoughts? A monarch said worriedly. When the other monarchs heard this, they lowered their heads and looked down. No one said anything. They had some thoughts. However, none of them dared to say anything. At this moment, wouldn't anyone be dumbfounded if they were deliberately provoked by other monarchs with ulterior motives and attacked together? That's not right. The Human Knight Empire is a rather distant empire from us. How do you know such distant news? A king suddenly reacted and asked curiously. I found out through the lords near my territory. Their world channel can send messages to each other. I also learned about the Knight Empire from their world channel. The king of the Blazing Sun defeated an empire-level Scarlet Army head-on, as a lord of all races, and then defeated more than 200 million fog monsters. This news will probably spread throughout the entire high continent, and even the myriad worlds before long. This king of the Blazing Sun is famous again. The king of the people of foreign race said with a dark expression, since this king of the Blazing Sun is so powerful, Why don't we move our countries? Even though the relocation of the parliament will greatly damage the foundation of our countries, it can at least protect the seeds of our countries. It might not be impossible for us to seek revenge from the king of the blazing sun when we rise again in the future. Another king of the people of foreign race suggested softly. When the other kings of the people of foreign races heard this, their expressions were either frown, disdain, serious, or deep in thought. Don't make such a decision unless you encounter a desperate situation. But we can make it our last plan. A people of foreign race said in the end. The monarchs nodded. This king has another idea. At this moment, the king of the demon soldier kingdom said, "Oh, what do you think?" The other kings of the people of foreign races looked over. Since we can't deal with the enemy, the king of the blazing sun, we might as well find other powerful existences to deal with him. That king of the blazing sun made such a great reputation. At the same time, it means that he has imperceptibly established a huge number of enemies. We can completely lure those enemies over and help us deal with the king of the blazing sun. We can completely lure those enemies over and help us deal with the king of the blazing sun. Towards the end, the demon soldier king's voice gradually became ruthless. This king feels that we have to do this for the sake of survival and the continuation of the country. The other monarchs fell silent. They widened their eyes and looked at the demon soldier king. They did not expect the demon soldier king to dare to say such treacherous thoughts. Lure the Scarlet Fog forces over to deal with the king of the blazing sun? Are you going to be a traitor in our Supreme Will's camp? However, it had to be said that this could also be a way to resolve their current predicament. Moreover, it was a very likely method to succeed. At this moment, the Fire Spirit Kingdom's king suddenly sneered. This king once heard of something. It's said that the ancestor of the demon soldier race was once close to the power of the fog monsters. It's even said that he was the spirit of a weapon of a mighty figure in a fog monster camp. Don't tell me you want us to lure the fog monster faction here, to lure the wolf into our house, and turn to the enemy. Towards the end, the Fire Spirit Kingdom's king's body erupted with blazing scarlet gold flames. A pair of scarlet gold fire eyes looked at the king of the demon soldier kingdom with sharp eyes. What nonsense are you talking about? The expression of the king of the demon soldier kingdom changed. He stood up and looked at the king of the fire spirit kingdom coldly. The other kings of the people of foreign races hurriedly persuaded them when they saw this. Only then did they sit down again. But they also did not like each other. A moment later, the meeting of the kings ended. The 16 monarchs were about to leave. Just as the demon soldier king was about to leave alone, he suddenly saw a few figures standing in the shadows not far away, as if waiting for him. The demon soldier king narrowed his eyes. King of spiritual insect kingdom, king of dark soul kingdom, king of savage elephant kingdom, king of ground hill kingdom. Everyone, are you waiting for me? The king of the demon soldiers said calmly. King of the demon soldiers. The spiritual goo king stood up. It was wearing a colorful witchcraft king robe, and had 7 to 8 worm sacks of various colors on its body. Strange insect cries came from inside. We're interested in what you just suggested. Maybe we can find a place to discuss it in detail. I wonder what the king of the demon soldiers thinks. The spiritual goo king said hoarsely. Sure. The demon soldier king swept his gaze across these monarchs and nodded slightly. Chapter 748 Breaking Through 2 Billion. Master God Tier Talent. Summon the Immortal Sword. The next day, Zhou woke up from cultivation. He activated the Hand of Wealth and reached into the void to take out 2 Grandpa Mao. If I had this skill on Earth in the past, even if I can't afford a car or a house, at least I won't have to worry about food and drink every day. Zhou lamented. Then he put away the 2 bills. Then, he walked out of the advanced grade Lord's Paradise and came to the Gate of Summoning. Zhou looked at the huge Gate of Summoning in front of him and chanted the summoning in his heart. The next second, the Gate of Summoning suddenly lit up with a bright white light. Then a large number of new subjects walked out. After spending 100 extraordinary tier mist cores to accelerate, the 14,700 new subjects quickly walked out of the Gate of Summoning. Greetings, my lord. X14. 700 The 14,700 new subjects said respectfully, "Welcome to Blazing Sun City." Zhou smiled. Then, he asked all the professionals to stand up, and realized that he had summoned a total of 480 professionals this time. Among them were one extraordinary tier intermediate grade spatial archmage, one extraordinary tier intermediate grade holy light knight, one extraordinary intermediate grade martial artist, one extraordinary tier intermediate grade chi practitioner, one extraordinary tier intermediate grade array master, one extraordinary tier intermediate grade army extermination knight, and one extraordinary tier intermediate grade necromancer. The rest were life professionals and combat professionals below extraordinary tier. The quality of today's summoning is so high. Zhou looked at the 7 extraordinary tier ultimate professionals and raised his eyebrows slightly. Each of their 7 extraordinary tier class could make a beginner kingdom faction, treat them as VIPs in the outside world. He did not expect them to appear in front of him together today. His luck had exploded. Then, he did not think too much about it, and asked the officials beside him to bring them to their respective places of work in life. After that, he ordered Bai Yun Wuxia and the other generals to gather all the territory soldiers and enter Mugus Ranchland continent. A moment later, Zhou flew out of the Ranchland continent with the army and returned to reality. He looked at the mountain of soldier-type recruitment books and soldier-type class certificates in the king's treasure box and smiled. Then, he did not waste any time and went straight to the gate of summoning. He spent 100 extraordinary tier mist cores to summon 360 million violent storm spirits and 360 million king of yellow gold. Zhou could not help but fall into deep thought as he looked at the recruits standing all over the ground. With the addition of this batch of recruits, the number of soldiers under his command had officially exceeded 2 billion, reaching 2,042,074,382. So many soldiers, he had to find them a place to live. Otherwise, sooner or later, his king of the blazing sun was about to be filled with soldiers. At that time, the other subjects would not be able to live normally. His blazing sun kingdom, as an extraordinary tier regional territory, had a total area of more than 54 million square kilometers. It looked vast. However, in such a large area, only about 1/10 of the territory could be used as a residential area. It was actually barely enough to accommodate 2 billion soldiers and other subjects, but it would be too crowded. It would be a little troublesome to place the soldiers in other territories of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. He had to bring the army out every day. If they scattered the soldiers, it would waste a lot of time on the round trip. It was not in line with Zhou's needs. Put them in the galaxy for the time being. The interior of the galaxy is vast. One galaxy can accommodate 1 billion soldiers. I have 12 galaxy under my command now. Even if one of them is reserved for the Heavenly Map Army, the remaining galaxy is enough to accommodate 10 billion soldiers to live, train, and live. However, in reality, we have to build the corresponding barracks buildings. We can't let the soldiers live in the galaxy all the time. The foundation of a soldier is still on the ground after all. Zhou thought. Your Majesty, I'll lead my troops to take down the 16 King Alliance now. At this moment, Bai Yin came to his side and said respectfully, How many soldiers are you bringing with you? Zhou asked. 300 million soldiers. Okay, go. Remember to bring a few god spirits of our country. Even though the forces of the 16 King Alliance are far inferior to ours, they should still have some foundation in the god spirits. Zhou said, Yes, Your Majesty. Bai Yin nodded. Then she turned around and left. Right on the heels of that, Zhou asked Wuxia, Feng Luo, and Vicky to lead the remaining veterans and these 720 million new recruits to the surrounding territory of the Night Empire to train. Then he arrived at the Lord shop. Then, he saw Zhou Qingmin with dark circles under his eyes and wearing a virtual game helmet. He was laughing and playing the game gloomily at times. Old Zhou, bring the new goods up before I play with you. Zhou called him. Give me a minute. I'm about to be addicted. Old Zhou said anxiously, and continued to be engrossed in the game world. Zhou, he was not in a hurry. In any case, Most of the things he had to do today had been arranged for his subordinates to do. He was not in a hurry for the rest. A minute later, Zhou Qingmin put down the virtual game helmet with regret and satisfaction. Then, he quickly walked in front of Zhou Zhou. "Thank you, Your Majesty, for distributing 10,000 virtual game helmets in advance, and letting me feel the joy of having teammates." Zhou Qingmin chuckled, looking like an old urchin. Zhou Zhou was stunned. Then he reacted. Yes, he had given Yuling 10,000 virtual game helmets. It seemed that she had already taken them back and distributed them yesterday. "You saw Yuling? Yuling? That little girl?" "I saw her." Zhou Qingmin nodded. "But she only went online for a while before going offline and leaving." Zhou Zhou nodded and did not ask further. Then, Zhou Qingmin took out 3 golden boxes from under the counter. In the first box was a yellow gold tier advanced grade accessory equipment. In the second box was a weapon. It was the enhanceable weapons that the ghost god had given Luo Sheng. The ghost god demon slaying halberd. Unfortunately, even though this ghost god demon slaying halberd had a good growth rate, and could grow to a low-tier deity-level elementary grade divine artifact. But firstly, Zhou Zhou did not lack low-tier deity-level divine artifacts. Secondly, this ghost god demon slaying halberd lacked the ghost god on earth skill that attracted Zhou Zhou the most, so it was even less attractive to him. Therefore, Zhou Zhou was really not interested in this divine artifact. However, Zhou Zhou was still willing to buy it with the mist core if the price was not high. Then, Zhou Zhou took a deep breath, and his gaze landed on the last item. It was a golden talent crystal. Zhou Zhou looked at it. Talent. Summon the immortal sword. Talent effect. A life form with this talent is born a favorite of the Sword Dao Law. The Sword Dao Law will personally forge a perfect enhanceable intrinsic divine sword for the owner of this talent. It's here. This talent. Zhou Zhou looked excited. Then he looked up at Zhou Qingmin. "How much are these 3 goods worth?" he asked. "That yellow gold tier advanced grade accessory, the bright jade pendant, is worth 20 yellow gold tier mist cores. Enhanceable weapons, ghost god demon slaying halberd. It's worth 100 legendary tier mist cores. Master god tier talent. Summon the immortal sword is worth 10 million legendary tier mist cores." When Zhou Zhou heard this, the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch even though he was already prepared. A master god tier talent worth 10 million legendary tier mist cores. Chapter 749 Enhanceable Divine Artifact. Regal Sacred Dao Sword. Alright, it was actually acceptable. The profits from the Monster Ranch's mist cores this morning alone had reached nearly 30 million legendary tier mist cores after all. It was naturally not a problem to take out a third to buy a master god tier talent. Zhou Zhou did not waste his breath. He took out a spatial ring and threw it to Zhou Qingmin. "Boss is generous." Zhou Qingmin took it and read it. Then, a smile immediately appeared on his face. Zhou Zhou did not reply and left with the 3 goods. In a study room in the advanced grade lord's paradise. In a cultivation room, Zhou Zhou looked at the 3 goods he had just brought back from the lord's shop, and naturally ignored the yellow gold tier advanced grade accessory. He also casually put away the growth weapon, the ghost god demon slaying halberd, prepared to reward any general he liked with it in the future. Then his gaze landed on the last summon, the immortal sword talent crystal. Zhou Zhou picked up the talent crystal and took a deep breath. Then he chanted to absorb it. The next second, the golden talent crystal suddenly shattered into countless golden light spots and flew into Zhou Zhou's glabella. Zhou Zhou was already familiar with this scene. He watched calmly as the light spots fused into his glabella and fused with the soul in his glabella sea of consciousness. Zhou Zhou's sea of consciousness was enveloped in a vast chaotic airflow, revealing a chaotic color. His soul was also chaotic. At this moment, he was sitting cross-legged in the center of the chaotic airflow, allowing it to revolve around him. From time to time, it would rush into his soul and turn into nourishment for his soul to grow. This scene looked as if Zhou Zhou's soul was a chaos ancient god guarding the chaos. After the golden light fused into the soul body, Zhou Zhou's originally chaotic soul actually emitted a faint golden light. At this moment, a sudden mutation occurred. A huge golden divine dragon had suddenly broke through the chaotic airflow and appeared in front of Zhou. Zhou looked at it calmly. The unknown golden divine dragon had also lowered its head and looked down at him. "Who are you?" Zhou asked. "You are qualified to know my name. I am the #1 dragon in the world. Regal Dragon, Aozun." The Regal Dragon. Aozun looked at Zhou with his golden and dignified dragon eyes, and said in a rumbling voice. Zhou's body trembled. Regal Dragon Aozun. The legendary dragon race. It was in existence on the same level as the extreme world-honored dragon that he had seen before. Moreover, he naturally did not forget that the Emperor Dragon robe he was wearing was created with this big shot's inspiration. That's not right. From its words, his level was probably much higher than the extreme world-honored dragon. Such an existence basically disdained lying, so what he said should be true. "Is Your Excellency Aozun here for my intrinsic immortal sword?" Zhou asked. "There's no need to say anything else. Prepare to accept your immortal sword." The Emperor Dragon, Aozun, did not say anything else. After saying this, he suddenly roared at the sky. Roar! At this moment the world shook, with the blazing Sun Kingdom's territory as the center, and all the living beings in a radius of 1,000,000,000,000 kilometers heard this soul-shocking dragon roar in their hearts. This dragon roar seemed to contain supreme dignity. When all the living beings heard this dragon roar, those with weak will could not help but kneel down. Even if one's will was strong, they could only barely maintain not to kneel. But his face revealed extreme shock. What happened? Is this a dragon roar? What kind of dragon can emit such a terrifying dragon roar? It's the dragon roar of the legendary dragon race. A legendary dragon race has descended upon the high continent. When the dragon roar gradually disappeared, all the living beings gradually recovered from it. Then they started discussing fervently. Some life forms were puzzled, some were afraid, some were excited, and some were worried. Of course, there were also some life forms who could tell that this dragon roar came from the legendary mythical tier dragon. There were even some existences who could tell that this was the roar of the Emperor Dragon. The appearance of the Emperor Dragon. Could it be that a new regal has appeared? They muttered. Blazing Sun Kingdom. In advanced Great Lord's Paradise. Zhou opened his eyes. I didn't expect that the talent of summon the immortal sword actually attracted the appearance of a mighty figure like the Regal Dragon. Was Qi Xiantian like this back then? I don't think so. Qi Zuanshan summoned the immortal sword, summoned the Scarlet Mystic Immortal Sword. And mine is. Zhou raised his right hand. A dazzling golden sword appeared in his hand. The hilt of the golden sword was carved with a high-spirited and domineering regal dragon. The sword body was like autumn water, looking reflective. The blade was extremely sharp. Just being exposed to the air naturally caused dark and deep spatial cracks to crack in the space around the blade. It could not even heal. Just as it was about to heal, it was cut into pieces by the sharp sword energy that pounced on it again. A supreme emperor's aura appeared from the divine sword. He felt extremely oppressive just by approaching it. This is the Regal Dragon's Sacred Tao Sword? Zhou muttered. Divine Artifact Name. Regal Sacred Tao Sword. Divine Artifact Grade. Legendary Tier Elementary Grade. Enhanceable. Divine Artifact Law 1, Regal Prestige. As a Regal recognized by the legendary Tier Dragon race, Regal Dragon, you will naturally have supreme pressure when you control the Regal Sage Tao Sword. Any existence in front of you will feel an extremely strong pressure. At the same time, the pressure on any existence will not cause any negative impact on you. You can take the initiative to activate and turn off the effect of this Divine Artifact Law. Divine Artifact Law 2 Regal Charm. You are a natural Regal recognized by the legendary Tier Dragon race, Regal Dragon. You have an indescribable extreme temperament and charm. When you persuade others to submit to you, they will easily submit to your temperament and charm, and be willing to serve you until they die. When you want to do something, your subordinates will help you with all their might. Your enemies might even defect from their faction, and become your subordinates. Divine Artifact Law 3 Regal Luck. As a natural Regal, your luck exceeds 90% of the life forms in the world. You will often encounter good luck in your daily life. When you encounter danger, It will be easier for you to turn misfortune into fortune. Divine Artifact Law 4. Destiny Regal. As a natural regal, you are extremely compatible with the regal law. When comprehending the regal law, your comprehension ability will increase by 10 times. Divine Artifact Law 5. Regal Dragon Protection. When a natural regal encounters a fatal threat, you can summon the regal dragon itself and personally protect yourself once. However, you can only summon it once. After this time, this divine artifact law will disappear permanently. Prompt 1. The soul has been forced to recognize you as its master. It cannot be removed. Prompt 2. As the grade of the Regal Sage Dao Sword continues to increase, the effects of its various divine artifact laws will also increase in enhancement. It can be upgraded to a Master God Tier Advanced grade. After Zhou saw the effect of the Regal Sage Dao Sword's divine artifact law, he could not help but gasp in shock. Then he was overjoyed, as expected of a Master God Tier Lord talent. Not to mention giving him a divine artifact with top-notch growth potential. The effect of this divine artifact was also extremely powerful. There was no need to mention the abilities of the first few divine artifact laws. The fourth divine artifact law ability, the Destiny Regal, made Zhou unable to help but be overjoyed. This was because this was the ability he needed the most. The Regal Law was the Lord Law. For the past 2 days, he had been worried about how to speed up the comprehending of the Lord's Law. Now he was actually given a buff that specialized in comprehending the Lord's Law. It would be strange if Zhou was not pleasantly surprised. Not to mention the last Regal Dragon's protection, a divine artifact law ability. TSK. The Regal Dragon itself had appeared to protect him. That was a Regal Dragon. It was at least a Master God Tier existence. If he could personally appear to protect him, no one in the myriad worlds other than the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord should be able to hurt him. Even though he could only use the Regal Dragon's protection once, it would not be able to hide the power of this divine artifact law. Chapter 750 The Favor of the Two Emperors. Zhou stood up and hung the Regal Sacred Dao Sword on his waist. Then, he looked at the sword on his waist and could not help but laugh. This was because he had a total of 3 swords hanging on his waist. One of them was the race divine artifact of the Cerulean planet's human race, the Sword of Xian Yuan. The second was a true divine artifact, Sword of New Dimension Creation. The third was the Regal Sacred Dao Sword he had just obtained. Any one of these 3 divine swords would be enough to make countless life forms go crazy in the outside world, even god spirits. However, they were all hanging from Zhou's waist and looked a little crowded. Zhou was not worried that the 3 divine swords would be lost, because they were already soulbound to him. He could sense their location, even if they were billions of kilometers away. With a thought, the 3 divine swords would transmigrate and appear in front of him. Unless someone used some special seal to isolate Zhou from the divine sword after it was stolen, it would basically not be lost. However, if there was really an enemy who could personally take down the divine sword from him, at that time, Zhou would probably be unable to protect himself, so it did not matter if he lost the divine artifact or not. But, it's still a little ostentatious. Zhou muttered to himself. Then he willed. The special divine sword aura on the sword of Xian Yuan and the Regal Sacred Dao Sword gradually disappeared, making them look like 2 ordinary sword accessories. As for the Sword of New Dimension Creation, Zhou did not even need to care about it. It was usually in a state of seclusion. Only when he used it personally would it reveal the terror of its true god-tier divine artifacts. Therefore, he did not have to worry about others being able to tell that this divine sword was special. At this moment, Zhou suddenly saw a new message in his friend list. Until now, Zhou also had many friends in his friend list. However, in order to avoid being disturbed, Zhou set most of his ordinary friends to receive messages, but not alert him. Only some good friends would be set to receive messages and alert him, such as Linger, Li Ya, Zheng Yuanqi, Baiyan Wu Xian, Qi Xiantian, Guo and the others. However, those who were on good terms with him usually did not send him messages, because they would come over to see him directly because they had something on. Therefore, Zhou was quite surprised to see this news. Then, he realized that the person who sent the message was none other than Yu Ling. She had added him as a friend through the Night Empire camp channel. Now, she was also sending him a message through this friend slot. Yu Ling, Zhou, Uncle Lu brought the god spirits to our Night Empire. Do you want to come over? Blazing Sun Kingdom, Lord of the Blazing Sun. I'll go over in a while. Yu Ling. Alright, tell me when you arrive. I'll pick you up. Blazing Sun Kingdom, Lord of the Blazing Sun, okay. Zhou closed the chat box and stood up to head to the Night Empire. Actually, he had the idea of going to the Night Empire today. Yu Ling's news gave him a reason to go. A moment later, Zhou arrived at the capital of the Night Empire through the spatial teleportation array. As soon as he walked out of the teleportation array, he saw Yu Ling waiting not far away. I'm here. Zhou walked over and patted her shoulder. You're here. Let's go. I'll bring you to see my king father and Uncle Lu. When Yu Ling saw Zhou, a look of surprise flashed across her eyes. Then, she pulled him towards the imperial palace. Zhou looked at his right hand that was being held tightly by the other party, and pondered for a few seconds. He did not say anything, and let her pull him towards the capital. At the same time, Yu Ling, who was pulling Zhou along, was blushing while pretending to look calm, as if nothing had happened. However, after running for a while, Yu Ling could not help but look at Zhou. She took a look and turned back. Then, she could not help but take a second look. The third look. The fourth look. She looked at Zhou in a daze, unable to look away. Zhou. Who would understand? Zhou, why do I feel that you're even more handsome than before? And you seem to have a better temperament, Yu Ling said in a daze. At this moment, she felt that Zhou was shining. This light was so dazzling. As a result, she felt that it would probably be difficult for her to accommodate other men in the future. This was because no matter how outstanding the other men were, they would probably not be able to surpass the man in front of him. Zhou looked at Yu Ling's condition, and then at the regal sacred Dao sword at his waist. Was this sword's strength so strong? Well, he had the top appearance and temperament of a celestial appearance to begin with. Now coupled with the enhancement of the regal charm, and his current charm, even the goddess of life would have to call him her husband, if she was here personally. Ahem. Even though this example was a little exaggerated, it was not far off. Zhou looked up in a certain direction without leaving a trace. Then his expression returned to normal. At the same time, just as Yu Ling brought Zhou to the imperial palace to meet the two emperors, at this moment, the two emperors were also looking at the two of them through an illusory water mirror in a hall. Haha, old G. It seems that your daughter is already deep in love. Lu Zhen pointed at the two people in the illusory water mirror, and laughed at a tall and handsome emperor beside him. This emperor was no one else. It was the Empire Lord of the Night Empire, Ji Yun. My daughter has grown up. I can't control her anymore. Ji Yun smiled bitterly. Come on, don't pretend to be obedient after taking advantage. Lu Zhen rolled his eyes at Ji Yun. Then, he pointed at Zhou in the water mirror and sighed seriously. This kid is the most outstanding lord among the lords of our human race. Even among the abnormal lords of all races, he has made a name for himself. Moreover, both you and I know how his territory is developing. If you're not satisfied with your future son-in-law, you can give him to me. There are still some descendants of national beauties among my direct bloodline. As for feelings, there will always be nurturing. Lu Zhen chuckled, his tone carrying a rare hint of seriousness. When Ji Yun heard this, he glanced at him and said, Haven't you always liked to let your children and juniors freely choose the love they want? Why do you suddenly want to force a match? Haha. With this kid's appearance, who wouldn't fall in love with him when they see him? What's wrong with a forced match? Do you believe that even if I bring over the girls who have long had someone they like among my descendants, they will immediately fall in love with Zhou once they lay their eyes on him? Then, they will have to thank me, their ancestor, for finding them a good husband that is hard to find in the world. Lu Zhen pursed his lips. Ji Yun stopped talking. The more he looked at Zhou's appearance in the water mirror, the more he felt that what Lu Xun said was very likely to happen. Such appearance and temperament are rare in the world. How did the heavens give birth to such a monster? This is too unfair to other life forms. Ji Yun shook his head. With his appearance and temperament, he can easily make a name for himself in this world, even if he doesn't have anything else. Lu Xun also sighed. The two emperors fell silent for a while. My daughter knew Zhou first. Don't do anything rash. Ji Yun suddenly said. So what if they got to know each other first? Is your daughter allowed to know him, but not my daughter and my great-granddaughters? Lu Xun said disdainfully. Aren't you ashamed? Does Sword Emperor Fuyo know what you're like? Ji Yun was pissed off. He travels the immortal world, and is free and happy every day. How can he have the time to care about me? Lu Xun said. Then, the two of them started arguing without giving in. Your Majesty, Princess Yuling, the King of the Blazing Sun requests an audience. At this moment, the respectful voice of an attendant suddenly came from outside the hall. The two emperors, who were arguing and fooling around, instantly returned to their upright postures, as if nothing had happened. Chapter 751 Two Faction Quests. Ahem. Let them in. Ji Yun's voice returned to its previous dignity. Soon, Zhou and Yuling walked in under the lead of the attendant. Greetings, Your Majesty. X2 greetings, King Father. The two of them said respectfully and led the way. No need for formalities. Ji Yun sized up Zhou. The more he looked at him, the more satisfied he became. Zhou, it's already the 6th day of the King of 10,000 Kings event. How do you feel? Is there anything difficult? Oh yes. How's the situation in your Blazing Sun Kingdom? How many fog monster armies are around your Blazing Sun Kingdom? He asked with concern. There's nothing difficult about it. It's just that I don't have enough faction points. As for the Blazing Sun Kingdom, other than an Empire-level Scarlet Army that came the day before yesterday and was destroyed by my troops, I haven't discovered any other Scarlet Army. As Zhou spoke, he sized up the Emperor of the Night Empire. Even though he had long known what this emperor looked like through Wu Tu's information, this was the first time he had seen it in reality. At the same time, the two emperors were also secretly clicking their tongues. Why did destroying an Empire-level Scarlet Army sound so light coming from him? Not enough faction points. Ji Yun thought for a moment and said, Perfect. Today, the Emperor of the Divine Sword Empire brought 6 god spirits to me, preparing to deal with the few Scarlet god spirits surrounding the Night Empire with me. I remember that your Blazing Sun Kingdom also has a few god spirits. Why don't you bring it over and slaughter the gods with us? During this process, I'll distribute a different number of faction points to you according to your performance. How about that? Of course. The loots belong to whoever kills the Scarlet god spirits during the god slaying process. If we work together to kill the Scarlet god spirits, the loots extracted will be distributed according to your contributions. How is it? Ji Yun said. Thank you, Your Majesty. Zhou immediately said. He could tell that this Emperor of the Night Empire did not expect him to contribute much during the god-slaying process. He was probably just looking for a reason to give him faction points. What a good person. Count me in. At that time, follow me back to the Divine Sword Empire and help me deal with the Scarlet God spirits surrounding our Divine Sword Empire. I won't mistreat you in terms of faction points. Lu Xun also smiled. As soon as he finished speaking, lines of quest notifications appeared in front of him. The Lord of the Night Empire's faction, Ji Yun, and the Lord of the Divine Sword Empire's faction, Lu Xun, has jointly issued a faction quest to you. Faction quest's name: God Slaying. Quality of quests: high-tier deity level advanced grade. Quest description: the Lord of the Night Empire faction, Ji Yun, and the Lord of the Divine Sword Empire faction, Lu Xun, want to join forces with you to eliminate the Scarlet God spirits around the Night Empire and the Divine Sword Empire. During the quests, you and your subordinates will be rewarded with a different number of faction points based on your performance during the quests. Mission reward: when you and your subordinates kill a low-tier deity level elementary grade Scarlet God spirit without anyone interfering, you will be rewarded with 10 million faction points. When killing a low-tier deity-level intermediate-grade Scarlet God Spirit, he was rewarded with 20 million faction points. When killing a low-tier advanced-grade Scarlet God Spirit, he was rewarded with 30 million faction points. When killing a mid-tier deity-level elementary-grade Scarlet God Spirit, he was rewarded with 50 million faction points. When killing a mid-tier deity-level intermediate-grade Scarlet God Spirit, he was rewarded with 70 million faction points. When killing a high-tier deity-level Scarlet God Spirit, he was rewarded with 100 million faction points. If you kill the Scarlet God Spirits with the help of outsiders, you will be given faction points according to your combat contribution. Zhou eyes lit up when he saw the faction quests. This faction mission rewarded him with enough faction points. Then, he suddenly thought of something and frowned. Why don't you look very interested? Ji Yin asked curiously when he saw his expression. Could this kid be looking down on the points for these faction quests? It's not that I'm not interested. Zhou shook his head. Lu Zhen and Ji Yin looked at each other, and could tell that the other party was hiding something. However, since the other party did not want to tell them, they did not ask. On the other side, Zhou looked at the faction quests in front of him, and sighed inwardly. As the lord of all races that was most valued by the human race, he could obtain such top-notch faction quests with many faction points from the Night Empire and the Divine Sword Empire. What about the True Lord, the God Shepherd Lord, the Great One Lord, and the other top lords? As the top lords of all races, there must be countless Empire-level lord factions rushing to give them top-notch faction quests. It was definitely impossible for him to surpass the True Lord and the others in faction quests. He still had to earn extra money, Zhou thought to himself. After dealing with all the faction quests on the Night Empire and the Divine Sword Empire's side, he would use the Eye of the Heavens anger as the foundation to hunt those fog monsters that the Supreme Will hated. Earning extra income was much more efficient than doing official faction quests. Your Majesty, I want another faction quests. Zhou thought for a moment, and suddenly said to Ji Yin. Lu Zhen and Ji Yin were stunned. Then, not only were the two of them not unhappy, but an extremely obvious smile appeared on their faces. Tell me quickly. We can help you as long as it doesn't violate the Supreme Agreement, and can help you increase your ranking among the myriad races. Ji Yin said seriously. This was also why he was not angry when he heard Zhou's sudden request. Instead, he was happy. They were not afraid of Zhou's request. She was afraid that Zhou would not have any requests to make. This was because it was very likely that Zhou no longer had a way to continue increasing his ranking. My soldiers are training around the Night Empire. From the beginning of the training until today, my soldiers have eliminated more than 300 million fog monsters. Lu Zhen and Ji Yin understood what he meant before he finished speaking. Ji Yin immediately said solemnly, I'll give you another faction quest. Currently, there are many fog monsters around our Night Empire. Not only are these fog monsters seriously threatening the lives of my subjects, they also severely affect the external trade and development path of the Night Empire. I hope that you and your Blazing Sun Kingdom can kill these fog monsters, so that my Night Empire can reproduce the peaceful scene before the calamity of all races. I will send the reconnaissance army of the Night Empire to help you investigate where a large number of fog monsters are gathered, so that you can save time searching for them, in order to help you successfully complete this faction quests. As soon as he finished speaking, a text notification appeared. The Lord of the Night Empire faction, Ji Yin has issued a faction quest to you. Faction quest's name: Eliminate the fog monsters. Quality of quests: mid-tier deity level elementary grade. Quest description: The Lord of the Night Empire faction. Ji Yin feels that the fog monsters currently in the surrounding territory of the Night Empire are seriously threatening the territory of the Night Empire and the safety of the subjects. In order to resolve this problem, Ji Yin hoped that you could kill these fog monsters, 312, 561, 564/1, 000, 000, 000, and return the Night Empire to its former peace. Even if this peace was very limited. Mission reward: 500 million faction points. Zhou looked at the simple and crude faction quests and finally smiled. Chapter 752 Deal. Zhou's greatest motive for coming to the Night Empire this time was actually for this faction quests. Otherwise, wouldn't he not be able to earn any faction points after killing so many fog monsters during his training in the past 2 days? Zhou would not make such a loss. He had to squeeze the value of so many dead fog monsters to the maximum no matter what. It had to be said, 500 million faction points was already quite high. It was already comparable to the faction points he obtained from killing 10 fog monsters that were hated by the Supreme Will. This trip was not made in vain. Put aside the fog monsters my soldiers have dealt with. There are still more than 600 million fog monsters left. At the speed at which my soldiers train, as long as nothing goes wrong, we should be able to deal with these fog monsters in 3 to 4 days, or even more. Use a few days to exchange for 500 million faction points, and it would be a huge profit. Zhou was very satisfied, and did not think too much about it. After telling the 2 emperors and Yu Ling that he would look for the god spirits in the territory, he left the hall, and prepared to look for Wuxia. This time, Zhou planned to bring a few powerful god spirits with him to hunt scarlet god spirits with Lu Zhen and the others. He currently had 6 scarlet god spirits under his command. Other than Vicky, Feng Luo, and Qi Xiantian brought by Bai Yun, currently, the god spirits around the territory of the Night Empire were Haros, high-tier deity level elementary grade; Zaiwu, mid-tier deity level elementary grade; Guoqiao, low-tier deity level elementary grade. Zhou prepared to bring Haros and Zaiwu along, and let Guoqiao guard Wuxia, and the veterans and recruits alone. Even though Guoqiao only had the strength of a low-tier deity level intermediate grade, however, if he was forced to activate the dragon slaying will, his strength could directly increase to the high-tier deity level intermediate grade. Even Haros and Qi Xiantian might not be able to defeat he with such strength. In addition, Wuxia had also mastered the small god Sura myriad spirit army formation. His combat strength was comparable to a low-tier deity. Coupled with the terrifying speed of the galaxy, they had no problem protecting themselves and escaping. Even if they encountered a life-threatening danger, they could just inform him directly. He could either fly back on the galaxy, or return through his return to the city talent. He could immediately support them, and resolve the danger they might encounter. Zhou, just as Zhou was thinking, Yu Ling's voice came from behind him. Zhou was stunned. He turned around and saw Yu Ling jogging towards him. "What's wrong, Yu Ling?" Zhou asked. "Do you still remember what I told you yesterday? It's about buying the galaxy. I told my king father when I came back." He agreed. After saying that, Yu Ling carefully took out a spatial ring from her waist and handed it to Zhou. There are a total of 5 materials needed to make the galaxy, as well as the cost of making 500 low-tier deity-level intermediate-grade divine crystals. "I'll leave them to you. I wonder when I can finish making it?" Yu Ling asked expectantly and nervously. With so many god-tier materials, and 500 low-tier deity-level intermediate-grade divine crystals, it was a considerable wealth even for the Night Empire. She could not help but be cautious. Zhou did not say anything. Instead, he first sent his consciousness into the spatial ring. Then, he quickly saw a mountain of spaceship manufacturing materials and 500 low-tier deity-level intermediate-grade divine crystals. Zhou put away the spatial ring. His expression did not change, but he was very happy. So many god-tier materials for the galaxy were enough to make 10 galaxies. Even if he had to give 5 to the Night Empire, he could still have 5 left and earn 500 low-tier deity-level intermediate-grade divine crystals. About 3 days. In 3 days, I'll personally send you 10 galaxy. Zhou said. 3 days? So fast? Yu Ling's eyes widened. She thought that such a god-tier spaceship would take at least half a year, or even a year to build. Zhou nodded. Each of the 10 galaxies given by the Lord Talent had its own galaxy low-tier deity-level elementary-grade manufacturing factory. In other words, it was a spaceship factory that specialized in making the galaxy and its exclusive intelligent life forms. To Wuxia, who controlled all the galaxy, as long as there were enough materials, he could completely use these 10 spaceship factories to build the galaxy in an assembly line. Under such circumstances, it would only take half a day. When you could assemble a galaxy through a galaxy star god manufacturing factory, in the remaining 2.5 days, it was the time when you had to process and modify these raw materials. Then I'll tell my king father this news now. Oh yes. If Uncle Lucian asks, can I tell him about this too? Yuling was about to leave when she suddenly thought of this, and turned around to ask Zhou. Of course. You don't have to keep this a secret. If you can introduce me to more customers, I can give you a 30% discount the next time you book the galaxy from me. Zhou immediately nodded. He could not wait for this matter to spread throughout the entire human race. When the time comes, he shouldn't have to worry about the materials for the galaxy. He might even be able to use this matter to turn it into a long-term profitable national industry. Really? Yuling's eyes lit up. For real? Zhou nodded seriously. Then just wait for my results. I'll go back first. Yuling hurriedly left. He could tell that she valued this matter very much. Zhou did not stay any longer. After leaving the capital, he took out a galaxy from his internal world and handed all the materials that Yuling had given him to Wuxia. He asked her to order 10 galaxy to build the galaxy at the same time. This way, he could obtain 10 galaxies in 3 days. Then, he piloted the galaxy straight to Wu Xin's location. In the northwest of the Night Empire, Wuxia was leading more than 1,742 million blazing Sun Kingdom soldiers, and more than 65 million soldiers, under the command of the Star Alliance Master, to eliminate all the fog monsters they encountered along the way. As everything was about killing the fog monsters and increasing the strength of the recruits under their command, Wuxia and the others did not occupy a few low-level regional territories along the way. Instead, they chose to continue hunting the fog monsters elsewhere to increase the strength of the recruits with the greatest efficiency. Under the radar function of the galaxy's powerful low-tier deity-level elementary grade, the fog monsters within a radius of billions of kilometers of the galaxy had nowhere to hide. They were discovered by the radar, and then eliminated by the soldiers of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, who rushed over on the galaxy. How did it feel to have a total of 1.8 billion soldiers kill all the fog monsters in the range of the spaceship's radar? Wuxia could be very honest. If there was one word to describe the current situation, awesome. This invincible war method that could be said to be sweeping even made a veteran like him, who had been on the battlefield for a long time, feel the hot blood in his chest stir. Maybe in less than 2 days, we'll sweep through more than 90% of the normal fog monsters surrounding the Night Empire. Wuxia thought. Chapter 753, Killing the High-Tier Deity-Level Intermediate Grade Scarlet God Spirit. One had to know that yesterday, they had only led more than 800 million soldiers to eliminate nearly 200 million fog monsters. Today he had brought a total of 1.8 billion soldiers. As long as no high-tier deity-level Scarlet God Spirits appeared to stop them, it was not impossible for them to destroy 400 to 500 million fog monsters today. To other factions, even if they had 1.8 billion soldiers, they might not be able to do this. This was because they could not quickly reach another location where the fog monster army was. However, the galaxy's terrifying speed and powerful radar search function allowed their Blazing Sun Kingdom to make up for this shortcoming, allowing their efficiency in destroying the fog monsters to reach an astonishing level. That was why Wuxia was confident that they could deal with all the fog monsters surrounding the Night Empire in 2 days. Old Wu, do you have wine? At this moment, Wuxia walked over and said. His face was red, and he smelled of alcohol as he spoke. It was obvious that he had drunk a lot. We've killed too many people in the past 2 days. We might encounter Scarlet God Spirits coming to take revenge at any time now. Can you drink so much wine at this time? Wuxia looked at him and said helplessly. He preferred military discipline and strict teams. Therefore, he actually did not like Wuxia being like this. However, Even though Guo was in the Blazing Sun army, he was actually not under anyone's control. As someone with high-tier deity-level combat strength, Guo only needed to personally deal with powerful enemies when they appeared. In other aspects, even Zhou did not ask much of him. Wuxian also knew about this. Therefore, he could not say anything to Guo. Haha, old Wu, you don't understand. As a traditional dragon slayer, wine is a treasure to me to increase my combat strength. You see, I'm drinking. Actually, I'm already prepared to fight at any time. Guo smiled drunkenly. After saying that, he burped. The corners of Wu Xin's mouth twitched. He hesitated for a moment and took out a jar of wine from his spatial ring. As soon as the wine came out, an extremely mellow wine fragrance dissipated. Guo's eyes lit up. This is my precious good wine. It's called Twilight in the Cup. I can't bear to drink it myself. You have to take it easy. Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly felt that his hand was empty. Then, he realized that his treasured Twilight in the cup had already disappeared. He looked up and realized that it had indeed fallen into Guo's hands. Good wine. Good wine. I knew that this wine was extremely good when I smelled it. Burp, thank you, big brother Wu. Wuxian. If he did not have any alcohol, he was old Wu. If he had alcohol, he became old brother Wu, right? Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly saw Guo's expression change. Enemy has appeared. Guo carefully placed the wine on the table at the side and pulled out his 2 axes from behind. His eyes gradually turned bloodshot. You interrupted my drinking. What a damn fellow. See if I don't cut he into meat filling. Old Wu, leave the wine for me. I'll come back after killing a scarlet god spirit. As soon as he finished speaking, Guo had already rushed out of the galaxy at an astonishing speed and flew in a certain direction outside it. Wuxian also came back to his senses. Galaxy 6, who was the enemy that His Excellency Guo mentioned just now? He said calmly. In Galaxy number 6, even though the intelligent life form he was riding on the galaxy was created by Wuxia and was under her jurisdiction, Captain. From the direction where His Excellency Guo flew, the enemy he mentioned should be a high-tier deity-level intermediate grade scarlet god spirit that had just entered the range of our radar. Galaxy number 6 said, a high-tier deity-level intermediate grade scarlet god spirit? Wuxian raised his eyebrows slightly. Even after Guo erupted with the dragon-slaying will, he only had the strength of a high-tier deity-level intermediate grade. Moreover, it did not last long. Facing a scarlet god spirit of the same combat strength, Guo was actually in a certain danger. Invite His Excellency Heros and His Excellency Zaiwu to help His Excellency Guo. Don't let him fight alone. Wuxian ordered. Okay, Captain. Galaxy number 6 fell silent after saying that. More than 10 seconds later, its voice sounded again, reporting to the captain. His Excellency Heros and His Excellency Zaiwu have been informed. The 2 of them have already gone to support His Excellency Guo. As soon as he finished speaking, a virtual screen appeared in front of him. Heros and Zaiwu turned into 2 streams of light and flew quickly in Guo's direction. They quickly met up with him. However, when the high-tier deity-level intermediate grade scarlet god spirit saw this scene, it was immediately shocked and turned to escape. Guo and the others did not have any way to stop him and could only watch him escape. Wuxian, who saw this scene through the virtual screen, sighed slightly. Then he comforted himself. It was acceptable to scare them away, as long as they did not stop him from training and completing the mission given to him by His Majesty. At this moment, he suddenly saw something, and his eyes were filled with surprise. More than 100 kilometers away, Guo, Heros, and Zaiwu were looking at the fleeing scarlet god spirit. Heros and Guo were fine. The 2 gods did not have enough desire to fight at this moment. However, Guo was different. Fuck, a dignified high-tier deity-level scarlet god spirit ran like a rat when it saw the 2 of you coming. Stop and fight me if you have the ability. I'm willing to fight you one-on-one. Guo was drunk and angry. Heros and Zaiwu looked at each other and smiled. This was the first time they had encountered a low-tier deity-level intermediate grade god spirit as reckless as Wuxia. Come on. Just as the two gods were about to return to the spaceship. Your Majesty. Wuxia suddenly looked into the distance in surprise. Then, he laughed out loud. Then, he activated the dragon-slaying will, and suddenly increased his strength from the low-tier deity level intermediate grade to the high-tier deity level intermediate grade. Then, he rushed over. When Heraus and Zaiwu heard Wuxia shout, they hurriedly turned around and saw Zhou standing more than 10 kilometers away from the high-tier deity level intermediate grade Scarlet God Spirit that had just escaped. Beside him was another high-tier deity level intermediate grade Scarlet God Spirit. It was Gerard, the high-tier deity, intermediate grade Scarlet God Spirit, he had summoned with the pillar of the Empire puppet. At this moment, the two of them were forcing the fleeing Scarlet God Spirit back in their direction, while Wuxiao attacked from behind. Heraus laughed when he saw this, and dispelled the idea of returning to the spaceship. He also turned into a ball of fire and rushed up, blocking the other direction of the Scarlet God Spirit's escape. Zaiwu felt a little helpless. He was lazy by nature and liked to be lazy, but now that His Majesty was here, no matter how much he wanted to be lazy, he did not dare to be so blatantly lazy in front of His Majesty. He could only fly up and stand with Wuxiao. They were very particular about blocking the way. He specially left a gap, as if he wanted to give the other party a way to escape. It was also because of this that this high-tier deity-level intermediate-grade Scarlet God Spirit always thought that it had a way out, so it had no intention of fighting Zhou and the others to the death. It tried to escape while resisting Zhou and the others. The result was that this Scarlet God Spirit could not defeat Zhou and the others. Even if it wanted to escape, it could not escape the pursuit of Zhou and the other God Spirits with the galaxy. In the end, when the divine power in his body was about to be exhausted, and he could not successfully escape, he realized that he had fallen into a desperate situation. At this moment, he, who had consumed nearly 90% of his divine power, could not even fight to the death in exchange for a chance of survival. In less than a moment, the Scarlet God Spirit was killed by Heraus' saber. Awesome! Heraus had a comfortable expression, as he felt promotion energy comparable to 81 high-tier deity-level intermediate-grade Scarlet God Spirits pouring into his body. He felt that after a few more kills and supplementing his comprehension of the laws, he even felt that he could break through to the high-tier deity-level intermediate grade. Chapter 754 100 million faction points. Zaiwu looked envious. He had enough nomological comprehension. If he could personally kill that high-tier deity-level intermediate-grade Scarlet God Spirit, he felt that he should be able to directly break through and reach the mid-tier deity-level intermediate grade. However, such a thing was not something that could be done just by thinking about it. Therefore, he could only watch helplessly as Heraus felt the pleasure brought to him by the boundless promotion energy. If I encounter such a battle again, I'll have to work hard. Zaiwu could not help but have this thought. In any case, His Majesty had mastered the ability to revive, and had an extremely generous reward for his subordinates to kill God Spirits. In addition, he could obtain a large amount of promotional energy by killing God Spirits. In that case, there was no reason for him to refuse to kill the enemy for His Majesty. Zaiwu quietly changed his mind. On the other side, Zhou also extracted the corpse of this high-tier deity-level intermediate-grade Scarlet God Spirit. The result satisfied him. This was because this high-tier deity level had a mid-tier deity level divine artifact in his hand. After extracting it, it directly turned into 3 high-tier deity level elementary grade divine artifacts. In addition, he obtained a true God-tier intermediate grade Book of the God Spirit, and a true God-tier intermediate grade Hero Inheritance Secret Manual. Other than that, when Zhou extracted his corpse, he also used the ability of the Lucky Star to obtain an additional loots. However, he was not as lucky as last time, and did not obtain another puppet with high-tier deity-level combat strength. He only obtained another mid-tier deity-level divine artifact. It was still acceptable. Compared to the gains he obtained, the Pillar of the Empire puppet was not worth mentioning after being used once. Then, Zhou looked at the Book of the God Spirit and the Hero Inheritance Manual and thought about who to give them to. Bai Yin had already given it to him, so there was no need to consider it. He thought for a moment. In the end, he decided to give it to Wu Xian, to give him a chance to advance further. Wu Xian had joined his Blazing Sun Kingdom a long time ago. Moreover, with his rich EXP, he had already made an indelible contribution to the development of the Blazing Sun Kingdom's army. Wu Xin's talent was gradually becoming normal, with the addition of more generals. However, Zhou naturally would not forget his previous contributions. After making a decision, he looked at the mission notification that had just appeared. Faction Quests hint. You and your subordinate have successfully killed a high-tier deity-level Scarlet God Spirit without the interference of external forces. You are rewarded with 100 million faction points. Zhou looked at the quest's notification, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Not bad. Obtaining 100 million faction points on the first day was a good start. While the other lords were extremely happy to obtain hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of faction points every day, 100 million faction points was definitely an unimaginable number for 99.9% of the lords of all races. Compared to those top lords of all races, even if I don't have their powerful and deep racial civilization foundation, I still have an advantage that they definitely can't compare to mine at the moment. Those are my second best territory development and powerful subordinates. Zhou was still confident in this aspect. At this stage, there's definitely no lord who can do what I can do. I have several high-tier deity-level combatants under my command, and can even easily kill a high-tier deity-level Scarlet God Spirit. Even the true lords can't do this. If one of the top lords like the True Lord, the God Shepherd Lord, the Great One Lord, and the Spiritual Venerable Lord has my current strength, Zhou clicked his tongue just imagining that scene. If that really happened, there was almost no suspense in this Lord of all races competition. Top-notch lords had deep foundations to begin with, coupled with the fact that they had powerful strength in the early stages. The position of the Lord of all races could almost be said to have been reserved in advance. Fortunately, this did not happen. Otherwise, it would be too despairing for the other lords. After returning to the galaxy, Zhou handed the Book of the God Spirit and the Hero Inheritance to Wu Xian. Wu Xian was stunned. He was about to say something when he saw Zhou wave his hand and stop him from saying anything else. Uncle Wu, there's no need to decline. We've all seen your contribution. You deserve it. Zhou said. Wu Xian was speechless. He looked at the Book of the God Spirit and the Hero Inheritance Manual in his hand and smacked his lips. Originally, he wanted to say that he planned to retire soon. After all, the Blazing Sun Kingdom already had so many outstanding generals. His ability was no longer as outstanding as when he first joined Blazing Sun City. Under such circumstances, he would retire after succeeding and leave his position to the later generations. He could also leave a good reputation. Now that His Majesty had suddenly given him such a precious God Spirit inheritance, how could he say anything? Thank you, Your Majesty. I won't let you down, Your Majesty. Wu Xian hesitated for a while before finally accepting Zhou's good intentions. What to do? His Majesty had given him too much. Zhou did not mind seeing this. Then, he told him about the faction quests he had accepted, and the need to take Heros and Zaiwu away. Don't worry, Your Majesty. With me around, I will definitely ensure the safety of these recruits. With me around, I will definitely ensure the safety of these recruits. Zhou nodded. Even though Wuxia was usually carefree and liked to drink, he was quite at ease when it came to serious matters. Your Majesty, don't worry. I will definitely protect these recruits. Wu Xian also said. Contact this king through my personal terminal if you need anything. This king will rush over immediately. After Zhou finished speaking, he took out a galaxy and brought Heros, Zaiwu and Gerard in. Your Majesty, what kind of method is this? As soon as he boarded the spaceship, Heros pointed at Gerard in surprise. Zaiwu also looked at Gerard curiously. The two gods were naturally not unfamiliar with this powerful enemy. Back then, they might not have been able to subdue the other party, if not for the fact that they were a group of god spirits. At this moment, seeing that the other party was actually standing obediently beside His Majesty, it would be strange if the two of them were not curious. On the other side, Zhou took out the pillar of the Empire puppet and threw it to the other party. Heraus hurriedly took it. When he saw the attributes of the pillar of the Empire puppet, his body immediately trembled, and his hands trembled. He almost lost his grip and let it fall to the ground. Zaiwu, who had also seen the pillar of the Empire puppet, widened his eyes. "There's actually such a treasure in the world," he exclaimed. "This thing is more practical than a high-tier deity-level divine artifact without looking at the number of times it can be used." Heraus also looked envious. Then, he returned it to Zhou reluctantly and complained, "Your Majesty, don't throw such a precious thing to me like a normal item in the future. I was so shocked that I almost dropped it on the ground just now. What if it breaks?" Chapter 755 By Yun's strategy, Zhou took it indifferently. This was how he treated people he trusted. Moreover, this was a high-tier deity-level intermediate-grade treasure. It would be a waste of its grade if it accidentally fell to the ground and broke. He looked at Gerard, who was standing a step behind him. Every time the pillar of the Empire puppet summoned Gerard, there was no specific summoning time limit. After Gerard, the summoned creature, consumed all the divine power in his body, he would naturally dissipate. At the same time, it meant that he had completely consumed the number of summons. Judging from the divine power in Gerard's body, he should be able to fight another battle. A moment later, Zhou returned to the Night Empire. In front of the Imperial City, 14 existences, emitting the pressure of god spirits, were standing there. They were the 7 god spirits of the Night Empire, and the 6 god spirits brought by Lu Zhen. Among these god spirits, there was the city lord of the 9 Sieves fort that Zhou was familiar with, son Wuxia. Lu Zhen and Ji Yin were standing in front of them. However, this was not the main point. The point was, at this moment, they were looking at Zhou, Heraus, Zaiwu and Gerard in surprise. 2 high-tier deity levels and 1 mid-tier deity level. This? Lu Zhen and Ji Yin were stunned when they saw the god spirit brought by Zhou. Lu Zhen and Ji Yin could tell that Gerard was essentially a summoned creature, and not a true high-tier deity level. But even so, a high-tier deity level and a mid-tier deity level also surprised them. One had to know that even in their Night Empire and the Divine Sword Empire, high-tier deity level worshipped god spirits were also very rare. Every high-tier deity level worshipped god spirit had a status comparable to Lu Zhen and Ji Yin. Even the two of them were only at the high-tier deity level. They definitely could not mistreat existences at the same level as them. Are this high-tier deity level and mid-tier deity level really the worshipped god spirits of your blazing sun kingdom? Lu Zhen could not help but ask. That's right. Zhou acknowledged. Lu Zhen and Ji Yin looked at each other, and suddenly felt a sense of urgency, that they were about to be surpassed by their juniors. Come on. In the end, the 2 Empire Lords did not ask further. Then, Ji Yin made a request to Zhou, hoping to use his galaxy to head to the location of the Scarlet God Spirits. The reason for doing so was that he and Lu Zhen wanted to experience the real experience of the galaxy for themselves. If it was really good, then Lu Zhen and Ji Yin would personally advertise for Zhou and promote the galaxy to other human territories. Facing free advertisements, Zhou naturally had no reason to refuse, so he took out another galaxy from his king's treasure box and let the 14 god spirits of the Night Empire and the Divine Sword Empire enter the galaxy. After they entered the galaxy, they were immediately surprised by the technological spaceship buildings inside. After a while, Ji Yin walked over and handed a map to Zhou. Nephew, this is the approximate distribution map of the Scarlet God Spirits around the territory of my Night Empire, who are eyeing it covetously. Follow the distribution of the Scarlet God Spirits on this distribution map, and search for these Scarlet God Spirits one by one. Ji Yin said, Yes, Your Majesty. Haha. You don't have to be so polite. You're a great benefactor of my Night Empire, and my daughter, Yu Ling, is so familiar with you. Just call me Uncle Ji and Lu Zhen Uncle Lu. Ji Yin smiled. Zhou Zhou nodded and took the map. There were 10 god spirits around the Night Empire at first. However, in the past few days, another 5 scarlet god spirits appeared around the Night Empire. So there were 15 god spirits marked on it. Among them were 10 low-tier deity scarlet god spirits, 4 mid-tier deity level scarlet god spirits, and 1 high-tier deity level scarlet god spirit. Zhou Zhou looked at the location of the only high-tier deity level scarlet god spirit and pondered for a second before crossing it out. Why did you cross it out? Ji Yin was stunned. I encountered this high-tier deity level intermediate grade scarlet god spirit called Jia De on the way here. He was killed by my subordinates. Zhou Zhou said casually. Ji Yin. Lu Zhen. The other god spirits. Killed him? Lu Zhen said in disbelief. He had even discussed with Ji Yin how to deal with the only high-tier deity level intermediate grade scarlet god spirit before Zhou Zhou returned. The 2 god spirit teams they brought did not bring other high-tier deity level god spirits after all. Instead, they brought a clear group of mid-tier deity level and low-tier deity level god spirits. Therefore, the 2 of them would definitely have to deal with the only high-tier deity level intermediate grade scarlet god spirit personally. They were already prepared, but they were actually told that he had been dealt with? Lu Zhen and Ji Yin looked at Zhou Zhou with complicated expressions. They realized that they seemed to have underestimated this strongest lord of all races from their human race. Zhou Zhou and the others did not waste any time after that. They immediately steered the galaxy and flew in the direction of the closest low-tier deity, level intermediate grade scarlet god spirit, Deer Forest. At the same time, about 200 million kilometers away from the Blazing Sun Kingdom, in the sky above the yellow gold tier regional territory, the Wind and Thunder Forest, an invisible galaxy was hovering here. In the spaceship, Bai Yin was sitting in the main general's seat, listening to the report of a diplomat intelligent robot in front of her. Bai Yin could not help but click her tongue in wonder after listening to it. The 16 Kings Alliance has actually split into 3 factions because of internal conflict. The first faction is led by the Fire Spirit King. They insist on a strategy of not submitting to our Blazing Sun Kingdom. There are a total of 9 kings in this faction who support the Fire Spirit King. The second faction has the King of the Demon Soldiers as their leader. They feel that our Blazing Sun Kingdom is invincible, and even the Alliance army of the 16 Kings Alliance can't withstand the sharpness of our Blazing Sun Kingdom's army. Therefore, they now have the idea of introducing powerful external lord forces to interfere. They even want to collude with the fog monster forces to deal with our Blazing Sun Kingdom together. There are about 5 kings in this faction who support the Demon Soldier King. The third faction is an underground faction. They use the Car Cloud King as their leader, and are afraid of the powerful strength of my Blazing Sun Kingdom. They have long had the intention to join my Blazing Sun Kingdom. There are about 10 kings in this faction who support the Car Cloud King. This includes the 11 kings, including the Car Cloud King. Some of them are currently in the camp of the Fire Spirit King on the surface, while the rest are in the camp of the Demon Soldier King. Tisk. My arrangements last night were not in vain. I actually heard such interesting information. We came at the right time. Bai Yin's lips curled up slightly. She immediately had a rough idea of conquering the 16 Kings Alliance after receiving His Majesty's instructions last night. Therefore, she did not sleep at all. She found Wu Tu overnight and asked him to find some spies and intelligence personnel from his Heavenly Map army to head to the 16 Kings Alliance. Then, she spread the news that the Blazing Sun Kingdom's army was about to attack in the various kingdoms of the 16 Kings Alliance, causing almost all the 16 kingdoms to enter a state of panic. At the same time, she also found some smart bots from Wuxia to be diplomats of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Wuxia personally controlled them and asked them to go to the 16 Kings Alliance to convey the news that their Blazing Sun Kingdom would send an army to attack the various kingdoms of the 16 Kings Alliance tomorrow. At the same time, she asked Wuxia to hear the thoughts of these kings. She did not expect to really hear such important news. Chapter 756 The Disappearing Scarlet God Spirit. Then does the king of the Car Cloud Kingdom sincerely want to join my Blazing Sun Kingdom? Or does he look like he's defecting on the surface, but he's actually harboring evil intentions? Bai Yin asked cautiously. At this moment, even though she already had a huge strength advantage, it was precisely because of this that she did not want to be deceived on such a small matter. Otherwise, she would feel unhappy even if she won in the end. Lord Star God said that according to their mental activity data, they shouldn't be lying. Instead, they sincerely want to join our Blazing Sun Kingdom. The diplomacy intelligent robot said. Bai Yin nodded slightly. The Lord Star God was the Galaxy Star God, which referred to Wuxia as an elementary grade low-tier God-tier intelligent life form. The huge difference in life level allowed Wuxia to easily see through the thoughts of a few extraordinary tier and epic tier kings, with the help of the robot's body. In addition, when Lord Star God came into contact with the Flame Spirit King, the Flame Spirit King had given us a hint during our conversation. The other party roughly hinted that if we can help the other party deal with the kingdom of the Demon Soldier King's faction, it is willing to lead all the kings of its faction to join my Blazing Sun Kingdom. According to the judgment of Lord Star God, the other party is not lying to us on this point. The diplomat robot said. Bai Yin thought for a moment and said, "Let me see the conditions they proposed to submit to us." When the diplomacy intelligent robot heard this, its mechanical pupils suddenly lit up. Then, a virtual screen was projected in front of Bai Yin. Bai Yin took a closer look and nodded slightly. Their conditions were probably that some of them still had to maintain their original status after submitting, which was to have the position of governor, like the original king of the Titan Kingdom. In addition, the subjects in their country had to have the same benefits, status, and treatment as the other subjects of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. There were no overboard requests. Bai Yin thought for a moment and understood. They wanted too many conditions. But did they dare to bring it up? There was a huge difference in strength between the two sides. If they dared to raise excessive conditions to submit, and make the Blazing Sun Kingdom disagree, the Blazing Sun Kingdom would directly not talk about this, and come knocking on their door. At that time, they would have no place to regret even if they wanted to. Those who could become kings were not fools. They knew that the person who understands the times was a wise man, and knew when to stop. That was why they proposed these conditions that were at least more reasonable, and would not make the Blazing Sun Kingdom feel impatient after careful consideration. This is the benefit of having strength. According to His Majesty, this is called subduing others without fighting. A faint smile appeared on Bai Yin's face. Then, she got the diplomacy smart bot to compile a report, and send it to Zhou to ask for His Majesty's opinion. A moment later, Zhou sent a reply. Bai Yin looked over. He realized that His Majesty had basically agreed to most of the other party's conditions. However, there was a change. That was Zhou allowed these kings who submitted to become the governor after submitting. However, if these governors and corresponding officials were discovered to be unable to govern after taking office, he could remove them from their positions at any time, and send someone else to take over. Bai Yin naturally had no objections to this. She directly handed this opinion to the diplomacy intelligent robot, and asked it to inform the Flame Spirit King and the others. Soon, the other party replied. They agreed. Seeing this, Bai Yin stood up and calmly ordered as she walked towards the command platform. Galaxy number 9. Inform His Excellency Vicky, His Excellency Feng Luo, and His Excellency Qi Xiantian. We can move our limbs now. Yes, Legion Commander. At the same time, just as Bai Yin was about to start the war of destruction, Zhou's god-slaying operation was also in full swing. However, just as they killed 3 scarlet god spirits, and were about to continue killing more, they suddenly realized that something was wrong. About 360 million kilometers west of the outer area of the Night Empire. This was a vast desert. Its name was the Flaming Hot Sun Desert. It was a diamond-tier natural disaster forbidden area. Zhou and the others were here. As far as the eye could see, there was yellow sand and very few life forms. This was because the average temperature of the air here was more than 1,000 degrees Celsius, which was already 1/6 of the temperature on the surface of the sun. Other than some mutated creatures that were naturally resistant to high temperature, there were only some fire elemental life forms that could live here. However, this temperature was naturally nothing to Zhou and the others. There was naturally no need to mention Heros and the other god spirits. Even though Zhou was not a god spirit yet, the chaos human constitution contained in his body was enough for him to easily withstand the high temperature. Not to mention that the 10,000 legendary tier elementary grade skills in his skill bar could easily withstand these high temperatures. These skills were all loots he had obtained from the war. Even though he had lost skills on him, these skills were not very useful. However, it would be a waste not to learn. He had already learned it. What if he used it one day? Your Majesty, at this moment, a low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirit from the Night Empire appeared from afar and quickly flew in front of Ji Yun. Your Majesty, there's no trace of the Scarlet God Spirit Cruel in the southwest. Ji Yun frowned slightly and nodded. A moment later, another low-tier deity-level intermediate grade life form of the Divine Sword Empire flew in front of Lu Jin from afar. Your Majesty, there's no sign of the Scarlet God Spirit Cruel in the northeast. Lu Jin and Ji Yun looked at each other. In the following period of time, the other human god spirits who had gone out to search for the Scarlet God Spirits also returned from afar. Your Majesty, we didn't find anything in the southeast desert. Your Majesty, no Scarlet God Spirits have been discovered in the sky. Your Majesty, I don't have any either. Soon, all the human god spirits had returned. As for the results of their search, they did not discover any traces of the Scarlet God Spirits they wanted to hunt on this trip. This is already the third Scarlet God Spirit that has disappeared, Ji Yun said in a low voice. They must know that we're chasing them, so they're hiding. It's also possible that they're gathered together and discussing how to counterattack. Lu Jin sneered. This group of Scarlet God Spirits are all unwilling to suffer losses. Zhou could not help but ponder when he heard the two emperors' words. According to the information he knew, the Scarlet Fog monsters were not stragglers. Not only did they have their own lords, kingdoms, empires, and divine kingdoms, they even had their own world channel with the help of the Crimson Overlord. Therefore, it was not impossible for an ally to be killed and send a message to their friends on the world channel before they died to tell them to be careful of the Lord of the Supreme Will faction. What should he do now? Zhou pondered. Chapter 757 Special Treasure. Wisdom Demon Crown. Zhou had a way, which was the compass of the soul of vengeance. This treasure from the battlefield of the end had been used more often after he had the Lord talent of the collector. Moreover, he knew how to repair this compass, so it was not impossible for him to take it out and use it now. Actually, he could also ask the Bodhi Supreme, but he had yet to repay his debt, so there was a high chance that the Bodhi Supreme would not answer his question. Just as he was thinking about what to say, Ji Yun flipped his right hand and took out a golden crown. On the golden crown were 5 7-colored gems side by side. However, 3 of them were shattered, leaving only the other 2 7-colored gems intact. Then, Zhou saw Ji Yun take off the crown on his head and put it on. Then, Zhou was shocked to see that a pair of ferocious and terrifying flesh eyes and a bloody mouth, filled with sharp teeth, actually opened on the golden crown. This monster image was in stark contrast to the image of the golden crown. Zhou suddenly felt a sense of danger, as if this monster could bring him danger. Little Ji, why are you looking for me? At this moment, the crown monster opened its mouth and said in a low and hoarse voice, "Ahem, there's a junior here. Give me some face." Ji Yun said awkwardly. The crown monster did not answer. Ji Yun did not waste any time and immediately asked, "I want to ask you something. May I ask where the Scarlet God Spirits who are coveting our Night Empire are now? If you need a limited distance, then let's go to the Scarlet God Spirits within a radius of 50 billion kilometers of the Night Empire." Ji Yun had just experienced the extreme speed of the galaxy and knew that the galaxy's hourly speed was 50 billion kilometers per hour. That was why he suggested this distance. The crown monster closed its eyes. A moment later, Zhou and the others suddenly heard a crack, as if something had cracked. Zhou looked in the direction of the voice. Another of the 5 rainbow gems on the crown above Ji Yun's head shattered, leaving only a complete and undamaged rainbow gem. Just as Zhou was guessing what was going on, the crown monster opened its eyes, and then blood-colored light shot out of them. Then, the gods and Zhou saw that this blood-colored light had actually formed a blood-colored map in midair. On this map, there were 16 black light spots gathered in one place. Those black light spots are the location of the scarlet god spirits you want. Little G, if there's anything you don't understand, you must ask me again in the future. I'll give you an answer. He. As the arrogant and cold laughter gradually disappeared, the blood-colored eyes and sharp teeth on the golden crown also gradually disappeared, allowing the crown to return to its previous state, as if nothing had happened. So they're here. However, I didn't expect there to be 5 more scarlet god spirits. They should be the helpers we just called in. Brother Lu, you're right. They do have ulterior motives. Fortunately, we discovered them in advance. Otherwise, if we let these 16 scarlet god spirits ambush us in secret and launch a fatal blow at a critical moment, our Night Empire will probably be destroyed. Ji Yun's expression was solemn. From the distance, it should be about 23 billion kilometers north. With the speed of the galaxy, we'll be there in half an hour. Lu Zhen's expression also became serious. At this moment, Ji Yun realized that Zhou had been looking at the monster crown on his head. He could not help but say, "It's a treasure called the Wisdom Demon Crown. Its function is to answer 5 questions from the owner. For every question answered, one of the wisdom gems on the demon crown will shatter. After all 5 wisdom gems shatter, the demon crown will open the seal and release the monsters inside. But don't worry, even though this treasure is dangerous, it will be safe as long as we don't use the 5th problem. When I return, I'll abandon it in the spatial turbulence. The spatial turbulence is very strange. At that time, even I will find it difficult to retrieve it and use it to answer the last question." Ji Yun said seriously. Even he, a high-tier deity level, might not be able to withstand the temptation of being able to answer questions. Therefore, he chose to banish it permanently into the spatial turbulence to prevent such a thing from happening in the future. "Your Majesty, can you trade this monster demon crown with me?" Zhou thought for a moment and said. Ji Yun and Lu Zhen were stunned. Then Ji Yun hesitated. "Don't tell me you want to use this last chance to get an answer? Even though this monster demon crown looks ordinary, I can feel that the demonic creatures inside are not to be underestimated. If you release it, it will definitely be very dangerous for you. Your Majesty, don't worry. I can guarantee you that I won't release it." Zhou said seriously. No joke. With his current strength, he had never triggered his danger prediction talent, even when facing a high-tier deity level. Yet, just a glance at this monster demon crown today actually made him feel a sense of threat. He naturally knew how terrifying this monster demon crown was. Therefore, he would not release such a terrifying demonic creature to harm him. However, he had the Diamond Tier Lord talent, the Collector. He could increase the number of times he could use it when facing such a treasure, with a limited usage. If he obtained it and extended its usage through the Collector Lord talent, it would not be too late to throw it away when the extended usage could not be used. Sure, I believe you have the ability to control yourself. There's no need for a deal. In the end, Ji Yun looked deeply at Zhou before taking off the Wisdom Demon crown on his head and handing it to him. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Zhou took it, but he did not put it in the king's treasure box. Instead, he carefully placed it in a separate spatial ring. "Come on. Let's see what these Scarlet God spirits want to do when they gather together," Ji Yun said in a low voice. Even though they knew that there must be some trap when the 16 Scarlet God spirits gathered together, however, their strength was not bad either. There were a total of 3 high-tier deity levels. Secondly, They had all seen the speed of the galaxy, and felt that they could retreat calmly even if they encountered any danger. Most importantly, even as the monarchs of the two empires, their trump cards were unimaginable to normal Scarlet God spirits. This was also their greatest confidence in daring to go over. Zhou had no objections. This was because his danger prediction talent and talent intuition lord talent did not give him any hints of danger, proving that this trip was most likely safe. They boarded the galaxy and flew north of the Night Empire without saying anything else. Chapter 758 Borrowing a Divine Artifact. The destruction of a group of god spirits. Half an hour later, an extraordinary tier wilderness regional territory. A galaxy that had entered spatial concealment was floating in the sky. Zhou, Jiyun, Luzhen, and the others were observing the scene below through virtual external scene mode. In their vision, a hall-emitting scarlet fog stood on the wasteland. The aura of the 16 scarlet god spirits emitted from them. Zhou and the others looked at each other and could see the confusion in each other's eyes. What are they doing inside? Can you tell? Jiyan asked. No god spirits spoke. Zhou did not say anything. He looked at the Scarlet Palace, but the building information given to him by this palace was actually a series of question marks. However, there was no warning sign in his heart, which meant that even though this palace looked mysterious, there was actually not much risk. After a while, Luzhen said, "Don't approach that palace first. Let's attack it from afar and see if we can force them out and probe their methods. If we encounter anything wrong, we'll return to the galaxy." The gods had no objections. This was indeed a good idea. Luzhen looked at Zhou. "Nephew, you haven't entered the god spirit level yet. Don't interfere in a battle of this level first. Just let His Excellency Heros and the others follow us." "Sure." Zhou nodded in agreement and said, "However, everyone, I have a way to temporarily increase your combat strength." "What method? Tell me." Jiyan was stunned for a moment before saying immediately. The other god spirits were more or less disapproving. In their eyes, they were the high and mighty god spirits, while Zhou was only a lord of all races, who had just arrived in the high continent. Even if he obtained the title of the strongest lord of all races in the previous Supreme Will event, and had a high-tier deity-level expert as his subordinate, how much combat strength could a lord who was not even at the god spirit level increase the god spirits like them? However, even though they thought so in their hearts, they did not show it on the surface. But in the next moment, they widened their eyes and looked at Zhou in disbelief. "I have some low-tier deity-level divine artifacts that I can lend you temporarily. However, everyone knows how precious divine artifacts are, so I want to ask everyone to sign a contract book with me before borrowing my divine artifact. There's only one term on the contract. I hope seniors here can keep the fact that I have divine artifacts a secret." Zhou said, Sign it, well definitely sign it. Good kid, you hit it well. Tell me, how many divine artifacts do you have?" Luzhen and Jiyan looked at Zhou in surprise. Previously, the news that Zhou had traded 10 low-tier deity-level elementary-grade divine artifacts to the human race through by he in exchange for the protection of the refugees, who had gone to the Blazing Sun Kingdom for 30 years, had been secretly spread among the higher-ups of the human race. Zhou had also completely attracted the attention of the higher-ups of the human race because of this matter. They felt that Zhou had already grown to the stage where he could repay the human race. Luzhen and Jiyan naturally knew about this. They did not expect that this kid actually had a divine artifact. Could it be that it was really as those higher-ups of the human race said? Was Zhou's luck so good that he would trip over an ownerless divine artifact when he went out? When Zhou heard Luzhen's words, he pondered for a few seconds and said, "About a dozen sets." Luzhen, Jiyan, the other god spirits. They looked at Zhou and thought that their ears had gone wrong. Zhou did not say anything else. With a wave of his right hand, a total of 14 sets of low-tier deity divine artifact outfits floated in front of the gods. The gods were dumbfounded. It had to be said, this scene caused a huge visual impact on the god spirits present. Am I dreaming? A female god spirit from the Divine Sword Empire looked at these sets of divine artifacts and felt a little dizzy. The other god spirits did not speak. This was because they also felt that they were dreaming. Did you obtain a high-level true god tier treasure? Lu Xun could not help but ask. Only a high-level true god tier would probably have the ability to obtain so many low-level divine artifacts. He had guarded the abyss for tens of thousands of years, but he had only obtained so many low-level divine artifacts and contributed them all to the higher-ups of the human race. For tens of thousands of years, some of these divine artifacts were damaged, some were lost, and some were snatched away by experts of the people of foreign race. Therefore there were not many left. Zhou said nothing. It was even more ridiculous than this after all. Lu Xun did not ask further. Then, Zhou took out a contract and wrote the content of the contract. The other god spirits immediately walked up eagerly. After seeing that the content of the contract was correct, they signed their names without hesitation. Then, they excitedly came to the 14 sets of divine artifacts and began to choose divine artifacts that were suitable for them. Actually, there was nothing to choose from. This was because even though the divine artifacts Zhou took out did not have any characteristics, they were basically suitable divine artifacts. Most god spirits could use them directly without worrying about being unable to use them. Seeing this scene, Zhou also nodded slightly. This time, they should give me a portion of faction points after killing the Scarlet God spirits, right? He thought. The faction quests, God slaying, stated that if they killed the Scarlet God spirits with the help of external forces, the faction points would be distributed according to their contributions. Now that he had lent these Empire God spirits so many sets of low-tier divine artifacts, he did not know how many faction points he could obtain from them. On the other side, the God spirits who were choosing divine artifacts suddenly saw Herass and Zaiwu motionless at the side. Why didn't you choose? A god spirit went forward and asked. His Majesty has already given us a set of divine artifacts. Zaiwu said indifferently. With that, the entire set of divine artifacts on him lit up with the dazzling light of divine artifacts according to his will. Herass did not even say anything, not even looking at the divine artifact outfits. With a high-tier deity-level elementary grade divine artifact given to him by His Majesty, he had long looked down on these low-tier deity-level elementary grade divine artifacts. The other gods. This light was so dazzling that they shed tears of envy. Soon, all the god spirits had already put on their divine artifacts. At this moment, they felt the powerful power enhanced by their divine artifacts, and instantly felt that their confidence had reached an unprecedented peak. This raised their morale to an unprecedented high. Lu Xun and Ji Yun were even more satisfied when they saw this. In the god spirit team of their two empires, other than the fact that the two lords of the empire were high-tier deity level, the other god spirits were all mid-tier deity level and low-tier deity level, and low-tier deity level occupied the majority. Originally, they felt that their combat strength should be slightly higher than those scarlet god spirits. Even though the advantage might not be great, it should be able to let them win. However, with this set of divine artifacts, the low-tier deity-level god spirits among them should be able to fight mid-tier deity-level god spirits next. Mid-tier deity-level god spirits would even be able to guarantee that they would not die in front of high-tier deity-level god spirits. Under such circumstances, their combat strength had directly increased by a large level. Then, the outcome of the next battle should be a steady crushing. What to do? An entire set of divine artifacts could give them such a huge increase in combat strength. Didn't they want to ambush us? We can also take them by surprise. After we go out later, don't reveal our divine artifacts first. Well, give them a surprise when they confidently rush close. At this moment, Lu Xun suddenly said. The eyes of the other god spirits lit up, and they nodded in agreement. Zhou clicked his tongue in wonder. As expected of an old god spirit, it was sneaky and sinister. Then, Lu Xun and the others did not waste any more time. They flew out of the galaxy and looked down at the Scarlet Palace below. Get ready, attack. Ji Yun and Lu Xun ordered one after another. All the god spirits through the offensive law skills they had prepared at the Scarlet Palace on the ground. 14 law skills emitting various divine power lights descended from the sky and hit the palace. The ground fell silent for a second. Boom! It was as if the world had collapsed with a shocking bang. An explosive mushroom cloud emitting all kinds of divine power light soared into the sky and spread in all directions in the blink of an eye. In less than a moment, all the wilderness, forests, deserts, lakes, rivers within a radius of more than 5,000 kilometers, all of them were devoured by the explosion. But fortunately, there were no other life forms here, because this place was already occupied by these scarlet god spirits. There were only some fog monsters outside the range of the explosion. If a life form was within 2,000 kilometers, they could also feel the air suddenly become extremely hot. Zhou narrowed his eyes at this scene. This was the destructive power of a god spirit. The other god spirits also looked at the scene below. They were also very excited that they could actually cause such destructive power. In such a shocking explosion, if they themselves provided half of the lethality, the other half was definitely enhanced by the divine artifacts they were wearing. At this moment, they realized even more how powerful the divine artifact on them was. At this moment, Lu Zhen, Ji Yun, and Zhou suddenly felt something and lowered their heads to look down. Their eyesight was extremely astonishing. They saw the Scarlet Palace in the explosion at a glance. The Scarlet Palace that was originally emitting scarlet fog was not destroyed after this round of law skill attacks. Instead, it suddenly became illusory. The next second, the Scarlet Palace suddenly released scarlet light that shot in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it included Lu Zhen, Ji Yun, and the other scarlet god spirits, including Zhou, who was in the galaxy. If one looked down from a high altitude, they would discover that the illusory Scarlet Palace had released a scarlet light barrier, trapping Zhou and the others inside. On the scarlet light barrier, one could vaguely see a ferocious and dignified three-headed, six-armed, skinny demon king pinching 3 different divine seals to maintain the stability of the light barrier. Chapter 759 Hell Demon Heaven Imprisonment Array. In the Scarlet Light Barrier. Haha! Your Majesty is wise. This group of stupid human god spirits actually took the initiative to attack the array core and activated our heaven imprisoning hell demon array. TSK, this is the first time I have seen a god spirit with a death wish coming to my door. The Lord of the Empire of the Night Empire. Oh, there's also the Lord of the Divine Sword Empire. Haha, what a huge gain. After we take them down, it's almost equivalent to us conquering the 2 empires of the human race. This battle record will definitely be appreciated by the Crimson Overlord. Big gain, big gain. More than a dozen ecstatic cries sounded. 15 streams of light flew up from below and appeared in front of Lu Zhen and the others. There were 15 scarlet god spirits. Thick spatial power erupted, forming a spatial passageway with endless suction behind it, directly sucking it into the spatial rift. Ji Yun and Lu Zhen did not panic. Instead, they first looked at the strength of the 15 scarlet god spirits. Then, they realized that among these 15 scarlet god spirits, there were 3 high-tier deity-level scarlet god spirits, 5 mid-tier deity-level scarlet god spirits, and 7 low-tier deity scarlet god spirits. Their strength was about the same as the humans. Then they sized up the scarlet light barrier. A few seconds later, Lu Zhen said, even though the Hell Demon Heaven imprisoning array they mentioned trapped us here, I don't think the strength of this light barrier is very high. Give us some time, and we should be able to break through this light barrier and leave. On the other side, Ji Yun felt the changes in his body as he said slowly, this Hell Demon Heaven imprisonment array seems to have the effect of suppressing my strength. I feel that my strength has been suppressed by about 20%. How is your suppression? I'm suppressed by about 30%. I'm suppressed by about 50%. I'm also suppressed by 50%. After Ji Yun finished speaking, the other god spirits immediately said. Ji Yun nodded. Low-tier deity-level god spirits were suppressed by 50% by the Hell Demon Heaven imprisonment array. Mid-tier deity-level god spirits were suppressed by 30% by the Hell Demon Heaven Imprisonment Array. As a high-tier deity level, he was suppressed by 2 levels. Lu Xun was probably the same. Is this their trump card? Ji Yin said softly. Then, he and Lu Xun looked at each other and smiled. If Zhou had not lent them the divine artifact, this Hell Demon Heaven Imprisonment Array might really pose a huge threat to them. However, with the 14 divine artifacts that Zhou had lent them, they could basically ignore this so-called Hell Demon Heaven Imprisonment Array. Even with the suppression of this Hell Demon Heaven Imprisonment Array, their strength could suppress these Scarlet God Spirits with the enhancement of an entire set of divine artifacts. The human God Spirits of the other 2 empires also realized this. They looked at these Scarlet God Spirits. Not only were they not afraid, but they also looked eager. On the Scarlet God Spirit's side, where's 7th brother? The Scarlet God Spirit in the lead was wearing a purple robe and a black crown. There were 3 pairs of black vertical eyes side by side on his face. At this moment, he frowned slightly as he looked at the other Scarlet God Spirits. 7th brother was killed by the attack of these guys just now. The other Scarlet God Spirit immediately sent a voice transmission. When Black Eye heard this, it looked at Lu Xun and the others with even colder eyes. He was the current lord of the Thousand-Eyed Scarlet Empire, a beginner Scarlet Empire. During this calamity of all races, his Thousand-Eyed Scarlet Empire occupied one of the 3 Scarlet Empires that besieged the Night Empire. Originally, they were besieging the Night Empire well. They felt that after a while, they should be able to slowly eat the Night Empire, a tough nut to crack, a tough cookie. However, today, he suddenly learned that 2 of the Scarlet God Spirits he had brought to the High Continent had suddenly lost contact. Moreover, he also learned that another Scarlet God Spirit had suddenly died today in the Scarlet Empire that besieged the Night Empire. The lords of the 3 empires immediately realized that something was wrong. Then, they only understood after knowing the last words of the dead Scarlet God Spirits on the World Channel before they died. It turned out that the Night Empire had already joined forces with the Divine Sword Empire to counterattack against the Scarlet God Spirits, causing them to lose 3 Scarlet God Spirits. This time, as the Lord of the Scarlet Empire, they definitely could not express anything. Therefore, they took the opportunity to join forces, and prepared to use this opportunity to ambush and kill all these human God Spirits who dared to leave the country. Black Eye even took the initiative to suggest that he participate in the battle himself. This was because in his Thousand-Eyed Scarlet Empire, other than the high-tier deity level, the other high-tier deity levels were still guarding the Guardian Empire in the Empire, and had not come to the High Continent. As for the other 2 Scarlet Empires, they had sent a high-tier deity level to participate in the battle. If he didn't bring a high-tier deity level combatant over, he might not be able to reap much benefits from this counterattack. Therefore, he could only do it himself since he had no manpower to use. However, he never expected that as the party in the ambush, one of their Scarlet God Spirits died in battle at the beginning. Moreover, they died aggrievedly from the unknown lost skills of these God Spirits of the human empire. This made him very angry. At the same time, he felt that something was wrong. Logically speaking, with the enhancement of the Hell Demon Heaven Imprisonment Array, no matter how strong the joint attack of these God Spirits of the human empire was, they could not directly kill one of them, right? As for why they were not injured, it was because they were obscure. They formed a mid-tier deity-level military formation, called Heart Slayer. This military formation could allow them to jointly defend against attacks from the outside world. However, if the attacks from the outside world exceeded the upper limit of their military formation defense, the additional damage would focus on one of the Scarlet God Spirits forming the array. And 7th brother was that unlucky person. At this moment, even though the Black-Eyed King was puzzled that the other party's destructive power exceeded his expectations, causing 7th brother to die accidentally. However, when he saw that these God Spirits of the human empire had already fallen into the range of the Hell Demon Heaven Imprisonment Array's military formation, and were suppressed by the strength of the Hell Demon Heaven Imprisonment Array, He quickly forgot this doubt. He licked his purple lips, his eyes burning with ambition. Today he would kill the god spirits of these two human empires. Then, he would replace their human empire and build his own Scarlet Empire on this high continent. Compared to the rich resources of the high continent, the resources in the Scarlet World, where the thousand-eyed Scarlet Empire was, could only be described as poor. Not to mention that the Crimson Overlord would give him additional rewards for establishing a Scarlet faction in the high continent. In short, there were many benefits. This was also the reason why he came to the high continent to develop the new territory of the empire. Kill. Black Eye did not waste any more time. It called for the other two high-tier deity-level Scarlet God Spirits and rushed towards Lu Zhen, Ji Yin and Heras. As for Gerard, he had already consumed all the divine power in his body on the way here and disappeared. However, seeing this, Zhou summoned another Gerard without hesitation and joined the battle to deal with the three high-tier deity-level Scarlet God Spirits together. When the other Scarlet God Spirits saw this, they also rushed up with ferocious roars and stood together with the other mid-tier deity-level and low-tier God Spirits. After the two sides fought for a while, the 12 Scarlet God Spirits suddenly felt that something was wrong. Why are these human race God Spirits so strong? Chapter 760 10,000 Feet Mountain Sword World. The Scarlet God Spirits were stunned. The other party's law skill attacks on him were extremely painful. As for the law skill attacks that he had really hit the human God Spirits, this group of God Spirits from the human empire had indifferent expressions. What was going on? All the Scarlet God Spirits felt as if they were fighting a human God Spirit that was a level higher than them. This made them feel a little suspicious. When did the human race have so many experts? At the same time, the God Spirits of the human empire felt completely different. He did not even feel anything when he saw the other party hit him. He hit the other party, but it made the other party scream in pain. This feeling could only be described in one word: awesome. Therefore, the human God Spirits gradually let go of themselves and no longer had so many scruples. They attacked these Scarlet God Spirits with all their might. There were even some human God Spirits who simply gave up on defense and relied on the super strong defense of the divine artifact armor to blindly pursue offensive attacks. In the end, even though they were accidentally injured, they beat these Scarlet God Spirits until they were indescribably miserable. They even had the thought of escaping. Zhou watched this scene and silently asked Wunya to stay at least 3,000 kilometers away from them. The aftershock of this group of God Spirits battle, if it was on Earth would probably be destroyed by now. Even though Galaxy was a low-level spaceship, it could not withstand the full-strength battle of these God Spirits. A moment later, Black Eye, who was fighting Ji Yin, looked back at the battle situation of the low-level Scarlet God Spirits while in combat. In the end, he only took a glance before he felt his vision turn black. This was because the Scarlet God Spirits that they had brought with them were being suppressed and beaten by the God Spirits of the human empire. In fact, 4 or 5 of the Scarlet God Spirits were already seriously injured and looked like they would not be able to hold on for long. What's going on? Black Eye was furious. This was different from what he had imagined. He observed carefully before realizing something. He immediately turned to look at Ji Yin, who was fighting him. To deal with us, you actually borrowed so many divine artifacts from the other 4 empires of the human race. The God Spirits of the other human empires are actually willing to lend you their divine artifacts, he said through gritted teeth. Even though these human God Spirits had controlled the light of their divine artifacts to conceal themselves, but as the ruler of the Scarlet Empire, he could still tell at a glance that each of these human God Spirits had a complete set of divine artifacts on them. Only this possibility could explain the source of the divine artifacts on these human God Spirits. However, there were almost 100 divine artifacts in total. The other human empires were actually willing to lend it to them during the calamity of the myriad races. Black Eye felt that it was ridiculous. The human race was actually so willing to sacrifice themselves for others. Ji Yin was expressionless, but he actually wanted to laugh. This fellow had actually misunderstood. However, he didn't say much, nor would he reveal that the divine artifacts on every god spirit came from Zhou. Zhou already had enough light on him. If it was revealed that he had many divine artifacts, he would probably provoke a group of terrifying and greedy enemies. At this moment, the two high-tier deity-level scarlet god spirits on the other side also realized that something was wrong. The god spirits of this human race empire were actually wearing divine artifacts to fight them. How could they match up then? The two high-tier deity-level scarlet god spirits immediately had the thought of leaving. The situation was already unfavorable to them. If they continued to waste time, it would not be beneficial to them. They might even die. They looked at each other, and then flew in opposite directions in tacit understanding. Trying to run? Lu Xun snorted coldly when he saw that his opponent had actually given up on escaping. He raised his right hand and saw a finger-sized black translucent sword floating in his hand. Then, Lu Xun formed a seal and chanted an incantation. Then, he used his sword fingers to gently point at the miniaturized transparent heavy sword. 10,000 feet sword, go! He shouted softly. The next second, the 10,000 feet sword suddenly flew into the sky and quickly enlarged. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a 10,000 feet sword-shaped black mountain. With a bang, it suppressed the area within a radius of 5,000 kilometers. Even the Hell Demon Heaven Imprisonment Array, set up by the Black Eye King, was suppressed by the 10,000 feet sword-shaped black mountain. The surface of the 10,000-foot-long sword-shaped black mountain was actually covered in dense black heavy sword chi. The two high-tier deity-level scarlet god spirits originally wanted to rush out directly, but as soon as they touched the sword aura barrier on the surface of the black mountain, they were directly rebounded by the sword aura barrier. When they saw this, they were already prepared. They immediately took out their teleportation scrolls, wanting to use teleportation to escape. In the end, after they injected divine power into the teleportation scroll, they realized that the teleportation scroll could not be used anymore. The expressions of the two scarlet god spirits finally changed. There was no way to charge out. Teleportation could not teleport them away either. This place that they had planned for an ambush had actually trapped them inside. Haha, how's the effect of my 10,000 feet mountain sword world? When Lu Xun saw this scene, he immediately felt happy and laughed out loud. If I kill you, I'll be able to leave. Faced with such a predicament, Black Eye and the other two high-tier deity-level scarlet god spirits were triggered. They turned around and charged at Lu Xun. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Lu Xun snorted coldly when he saw this. He picked up his high-tier deity divine artifact, the Lu Ming sword, and rushed towards them. At the same time, Heros and Gerard also rushed up. The 5 high-tier deity levels fought in the blink of an eye. The area within a radius of 100,000 kilometers had become the battlefield of the 5 high-tier deity levels at this moment. Just the aftershocks of the battle could easily cover an area of 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers. In this range, even low-tier deity-level deities had to hide far away. Otherwise, they might be affected by the aftershocks of their battle. This was also Zhou's first time seeing such a scene. He could not help but fly out of the spaceship and watch this peerless divine battle from the sky. In addition, he was also very cautious. After walking out of the spaceship, he directly used the space-time boundary of the Sword of New Dimension Creation, placing himself in a temporarily isolated space-time boundary. This space-time region had its own independent rules of time and space. Only true god-tier experts and above could probably discover his existence. Therefore, he was not worried that he would be discovered by these scarlet god spirits when he came out to watch the battle. On the other side, these scarlet god spirits all began to risk their lives, perhaps because they realized that they had fallen into a desperate situation. They used all kinds of trump cards, law skills, secret techniques, and taboo techniques, raising their combat strength to an extremely high level in a short period of time. For a moment, Lu Xun and the other human god spirits, who originally had the advantage, gradually showed signs of being unable to suppress the other party. Even the human god spirits who had divine artifacts had begun to be injured. However, all the god spirits present knew that the sudden increase in strength of these scarlet god spirits was only temporary. As long as the human god spirits could withstand the pressure during this period of time, when the strength of these scarlet god spirits returned to normal, the backlash of various taboo techniques would continuously eat into them. At that time, the combat power of these scarlet god spirits would decrease drastically. When the time comes, that was when they would sound the horn of counterattack. The human god spirits were enduring, and were also waiting for the eruption. However, the sudden death of a human god spirit from the Divine Sword Empire changed the situation suddenly. Chapter 761 The Flower Sword Immortal's Gift. God Tier Secondary Profession, Immortal Plant Master. Brother Luo. A furious roar sounded. A sword beam instantly flew in front of the corpse of a human god spirit that had fallen into the desert, revealing the figure of a sword immortal in flowery clothes. He hugged the corpse of the dead sword immortal and looked at the other party's lifeless face. His pupils immediately constricted, and then the expression in his eyes gradually became a little crazy. When the other sword immortals saw that a sword immortal had actually died on their side, their bodies trembled endlessly. A shocking killing intent, and sword chi gradually rose from their bodies. Then, they saw the sword immortal in flowery clothes turn to look at the scarlet god spirits. He suddenly formed a seal with his hands, and blood-colored sword beams suddenly shot out from him. In less than a few seconds, his flowery clothes were dyed red. Unsealed sword forbidden technique. Flower sword immortal is going all out. A worshipped god spirit from the people of foreign races from the Night Empire said with a heavy expression. The unsealed sword forbidden technique was a secret sword immortal technique of the Divine Sword Empire. Sword immortals who used this secret technique could obtain a huge increase in strength in a short period of time at the cost of their lifespan. The more lifespan they consumed, the higher the strength they could obtain. A low-tier deity-level sword immortal could even deal with a mid-tier deity-level enemy if he consumed most of his lifespan. However, even though this combat strength enhancement effect was powerful, most chi practitioners were actually unwilling to use such a forbidden method as pursuers of longevity. As for the sword immortal, it was a small number of chi practitioners who were willing to use such a taboo technique in order to pursue their thoughts. That was also the reason why the other chi practitioners were most unwilling to provoke the sword cultivators faction amongst the chi practitioners, who would be willing to become enemies with a chi practitioner who was good at attacking and was willing to risk his life for no reason. The three other sword immortals who were on good terms with sword immortal Luo followed suit and unleashed the unsealed sword forbidden technique too. The four sword immortals who used the unsealed sword forbidden technique, coupled with their divine artifacts, allowed them, who were originally only low-tier deity-level god spirits, to directly possess mid-tier deity-level combat power. This immediately reversed the situation. After a while, the taboo spells of these scarlet god spirits finally ended. All kinds of backlashes came one after another, causing their combat strength to decrease to an astonishing level in a very short period of time. This made it easier for the god spirits of the human empire to fight. In less than a moment, a scarlet god spirit was killed by the human god spirits. It was as if a domino switch had been turned on in the following time, as the first scarlet god spirit died in battle. Scarlet god spirits died in battle one after another. 2 hours later, all the scarlet god spirits present had died in battle. Then, among the god spirits of the human empire, other than the four sword immortals who were unable to continue fighting, the other god spirits turned around, without hesitation, to help Lu Zhen and the others deal with the four scarlet god spirits. Lu Zhen's side already had a certain advantage. There were so many low-tier deity-level and mid-tier deity-level god spirits coming to help. In less than a moment, Black Eye and the other two high-tier deity-level scarlet god spirits died under the siege of these god spirits. On the battlefield, even though Lu Zhen, Ji Yun, and the god spirits of the other two empires had obtained victory, they did not look happy. Flower Sword Immortal was currently surrounded by immortals. She hugged Sword Immortal Luo's limp body and remained silent. Flower Sword Immortal and Tri-Talent Sword Immortal Luo Yuan are close friends. Their friendship has always been a legend, even among us Qi practitioners. There have even been stories about the two immortals in some small worlds. I didn't expect that today. A god spirit from the Night Empire lamented. Lu Zhen and Ji Yin also watched this scene in silence. Suddenly, Ji Yin suddenly thought of something. He suddenly clapped and said excitedly, "How could I forget that my good nephew has a method to revive immortals? I'll go look for him now." After he finished speaking, he went to look for the galaxy. "No need, Your Majesty. I'm here." At this moment, a voice came from not far away. Then, Zhou flew over from afar and arrived in front of the immortals and gods. "Your Majesty, you must save my best friend. As long as you're willing to save my best friend, I, Hua Qinglong, am willing to do anything." The white-haired Flower Sword Immortal immediately carried Sword Immortal Luo to Zhou and looked at him with bloodshot eyes. With that, he directly took out his spatial ring, and then took out the corpse of the mid-tier deity-level elementary grade Scarlet God Spirit he had just killed with all his might. He handed them all to Zhou with trembling hands. "Don't worry. There is someone capable of reviving Tri-Talent Sword Immortal in my territory," Zhou said. However, he did not take the spatial ring and the corpses of the god spirits. After this battle, even though Zhou did not participate in the battle directly, everyone could be considered comrades who had experienced life and death battles together. He had also witnessed the loyalty of these sword immortals. He was more or less moved. Under such circumstances, Zhou did not want to have anything to do with benefits when it came to reviving his comrades. If he wanted the corpses of these scarlet god spirits, he could have obtained them in his own way. There was no need to use such a method. Please accept them. However, Flower Sword Immortal resolutely handed over his spatial ring and the scarlet god spirit's corpses. Just as Zhou was about to say something, he heard Lu Zhen say, "Nephew, take them. We sword immortals hate owing karma to others the most. Since you have agreed to Flower Sword Immortal's request to save Flower Sword Immortal's close friend, Flower Sword Immortal has to return the favor to you. Otherwise, once he owes you such karma, he will probably have inner demons in his heart in the future. When that happens, be it his cultivation or Sword Dao realm, it will probably be very difficult for him to make another breakthrough. He might even be in danger of losing his life." Zhou was stunned when he heard this. He immediately took the other party's spatial ring and the corpse of a low-level mid-tier deity-level scarlet god spirit without hesitation. When Flower Sword Immortal saw this, a faint smile finally appeared on his face. Even the blood in his eyes faded a little. However, his white hair and visible wrinkles proved that the aftereffects of him using the unsealed sword forbidden technique were still with him. Zhou looked at the scarlet god spirit's corpse and realized that the most valuable commodity on he was only an advanced grade divine artifact. He retracted his gaze and looked at the spatial ring. He glanced at the thing inside and raised his eyebrows slightly when he made it realize him as its master. This was because Flower Sword Immortal's spatial ring did not have any divine artifacts or god-tier treasures. Most of it contained various Sword Dao manuals and notes related to Flower Sword Immortal's Sword Dao comprehension. There was only one other item type left. There were all kinds of books piled up like a small mountain, and what was recorded in that book was actually a complete set of low-tier deity-level elementary grade immortal plant master secondary profession inheritance. It recorded a rich variety of medicinal herbs, plants, and cultivation methods, from low-level spiritual plants to high-level immortal plants. Zhou looked up at Flower Sword Immortal in surprise. He did not expect this Sword Immortal to actually have a god-tier secondary profession. Chapter 762 Lu Zhen's Deal. Thank you for your legacy, Senior Flower Sword Immortal. I will make good use of it and find a suitable successor for you, Zhou said seriously. As long as your majesty thinks it's useful. Flower Sword Immortal nodded. Zhou acknowledged. Then, he looked at the other three sword immortals whose lifespan had also decreased greatly, because they used forbidden techniques, and the other Empire God spirits, and sword immortals, who were either lightly injured or seriously injured. He pondered for a few seconds and looked at Lu Zhen. Uncle Lu, most of our gods and sword immortals are already injured. How should we resolve the crisis of the myriad races in the Divine Sword Empire? When Lu Zhen heard this, he looked at the god spirits and sword immortals in front of him. After a few seconds of silence, he said firmly, "Well, continue tomorrow." But they are injured now, and Flower Sword Immortal, and them can't continue fighting, because they used forbidden spells. How can they fight? They could well perish. Zhou was stunned for a moment before hurriedly saying, "Flower Sword Immortal, and the other gods who can't fight can choose not to fight. But the other god spirits and sword immortals must fight." Lu Zhen was exceptionally determined when he heard this. Then, he looked at Zhou and said in a deep voice, "God spirits will not allow themselves to be easily injured because once they are injured, they will need hundreds or even thousands of years to recuperate and recover from their injuries without external help. But we don't have that much time to recover. If we let these fog monster armies wander around our human empire for a day, hundreds or even tens of millions of human life forms will die at their hands. After hundreds or thousands of years, our human race has long been destroyed. We don't have time to recuperate. Even if I have to fight to the death, I have to keep fighting. This is one of the reasons why we human powerhouses exist." As Lu Zhen spoke, he looked at Zhou. There was another reason he didn't say. That was, he knew that Zhou's King of 10,000 Kings activity would only last for a month. After a month it would end. Today was already the 6th day. 1/5 of the event time had passed. There was not much time left for Zhou. They knew that it was very difficult for Zhou to fight against those top lords alone. The great race civilization behind them was something that the human civilization could not compare to. The behind-the-scenes help they could give their lords was also something that their human civilization could not catch up to. But could they give up because of this? Of course not. It was not easy for them to encounter an opportunity that could allow humanity to rise to the top of the myriad races. Even if they had to risk their lives and become one of the nameless skeletons under Zhou's feet, they had to support him and let him grow to the peak of the myriad races. So what if they were injured? They would perish at most. Some would die, so that others may survive. The reason why the human race had been able to survive such a cruel era of struggle until now was because of this belief. It had even existed for a longer time than those races and civilizations that were much stronger than their human civilization. They were already used to this, and they had long been prepared to sacrifice themselves for the future of the human race. Zhou, I remember that after you resurrect a god spirit, the god spirit's injuries will directly recover, right? Lu Zhen smiled. Yes, but the capable person in my territory can only revive mid-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirits at the moment. Zhou said. That's good. Lu Zhen looked at the other human god spirits and said in a low voice. Did you hear that clearly? From tomorrow onwards, all existences below the mid-tier deity-level elementary grade, don't be afraid of death when fighting. If you die, I will naturally ask the King of the Blazing Sun to revive you. If one day, even Zhou will not be able to revive you, you will forever be engraved in the history books of our human race. No matter how strong or weak you are, you will forever be heroes of our human race. Let's kill these scarlet monsters right now. Avenge the deaths of our human clansmen. Fight to the death for the continuation of our human civilization. Are you willing? Lu Zhen roared at the end. Kill. The other human god spirits roared when they heard this. Under the furious roars of the gods, the sun and moon lost their light, and the mountains and rivers changed color within a radius of 5,000 kilometers. The matter of resurrecting them is up to you. Amidst this earth-shattering roar, Lu Zhen looked at Zhou and said. Zhou looked at Lu Zhen. With his 6 senses, he could roughly guess the other party's thoughts even without relying on his high-level mental perception. He looked at Lu Zhen for a few seconds before nodding without saying anything. Then, he waved his right hand and saw many bottles of potions and medicinal pills appear in the air. Without exception, These potions and pills emitted the auras of low-tier and mid-tier deity level. Zhou did have high-tier deity level potions too, but he did not take them out, seeing that Lu Zhen and the others did not seem to be injured. I obtained these potions by chance. We still have a lot of battles to fight. Even though these potions can't immediately heal your injuries, they can still relieve, suppress, and help you slowly recover your injuries. Seniors, come and get what suits you, Zhou said. Lu Zhen and company were stunned when they saw this scene before laughing. The mid-tier deity level and lesser deities of the other two human empires looked at each other. Then, they walked over one by one and chose suitable healing medicines for themselves. At the same time, they also handed the corpse of the Scarlet God Spirit they had killed to Zhou. During this process, they tacitly did not even say a word. Even Lu Zhen and company walked over and handed the corpse of the high-tier deity-level Scarlet God Spirit they had killed to Zhou. Zhou did not refuse and accepted them all. Soon all the medicinal pills and potions were chosen. When Zhou saw this, he said, "Since everyone has chosen to hand over the Scarlet God Spirit's corpse that you killed with all your might, please choose 2 of the divine artifacts on you and give them to you. Don't refuse, or I might also suffer from karma." The immortals fell silent. To them, the 2 divine artifacts were too precious. "What are you looking at? Pick quickly." Lu Zhen immediately scolded with a smile. Then, he and Ji Yin came in front of Zhou. "Nephew, you seem to be very interested in the corpses of high-level existences?" Ji Yin asked curiously. "My drop rate is hundreds of millions of points higher than other life forms." Zhou thought for a moment and said without hiding anything. Ji Yin and Lu Zhen looked at each other and nodded in their hearts. In fact, they also guessed it. Zhou had just confirmed it. They guessed that their nephew's drop rate was probably 10% or 20% higher than others. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to be so eager for the corpses of high-level god spirits. "So you're born lucky." Lu Zhen patted Zhou's shoulder. "Then how about we make a deal? We'll bring you the corpses of the scarlet god spirits, or the god spirits of the people of foreign races. Then we'll trade them with you. Then, you'll give us divine artifacts as the price for buying the corpses of high-level existences. How about that?" Lu Zhen looked at Zhou with bright eyes. The human race, no, most of the races in the myriad races, were really lacking in divine artifacts. That was why he suggested this idea to Zhou. With such a talent by his side, it would be a waste of resources if he didn't use it as leverage. Chapter 763: The Destruction of the 16 Kings Alliance. Sure. Zhou's eyes lit up when he heard that. Then, how about I use 2 low-tier deity-level divine artifacts to trade for the corpse of a lesser god spirit, who had a divine artifact of the same level when he was alive? Mid-tier deity level and high-tier deity level, and so on. If the corpse didn't have a divine artifact when it was alive, I can also use a divine artifact of the same level to exchange for it. How about that? Zhou carefully raised his conditions. Actually, he could give more. In any case, he already had a mountain of low-tier deity-level elementary-grade divine artifacts. Even if it was the corpse of a low-tier god spirit, who had a divine artifact of the same level when he was alive, he would be able to make a killing if he directly gave the other party an entire set of divine artifacts, 6 of them. However, with his current strength and status, it was really not appropriate for him to state such ridiculous terms. He was not afraid that Lu Zhen and the others would covet it. It was just that it was really not suitable, and it was also inconsistent with his personality, that had always pursued noble development. On the other side, Lu Zhen and Ji Yin were stunned. It was not that Zhou had given too little. It was because Zhou was proposing to give too much. It had to be known that the corpse of a low-tier deity-level god spirit, who had a divine artifact of the same level, when he was alive, was usually impossible to obtain a divine artifact that he had. The more precious the spoils of war, the lower the probability of them dropping after all. Treasures like divine artifacts had a probability of less than 10%, or even less than 1%. This was also one of the reasons why so many god spirits had died in the war over the years, but divine artifacts were still decreasing in number. Lu Zhen and Ji Yun's original thoughts were, even if Zhou Zhou said that they were willing to exchange the corpses of 3 low-tier deity-level god spirits with divine artifacts of the same level for a low-tier deity-level divine artifact, they would be willing to accept it. Unexpectedly, it had actually become a corpse of a low-tier deity-level divine artifact of the same level in exchange for 3 low-tier deity-level divine artifacts. Mid-tier deity-level and high-tier deity-level god spirit corpses too? Are you serious? Ji Yun could not help but ask. Zhou Zhou looked at their expressions and had an idea. He immediately nodded with a faint smile. Okay. Let's follow this. Lu Zhen hurriedly agreed, afraid that Zhou Zhou would go back on his word. 100 legendary tier enemy corpses can also be exchanged for a low-tier deity-level divine artifact. Not only did Zhou Zhou not go back on his word, he also suddenly remembered that legendary tier weapons and equipment could also become low-tier deity-level divine artifacts. He immediately added, Okay. Lu Zhen hurriedly said again. The faces of he and Ji Yun were filled with unconcealable bright smiles. God spirit-level enemies were hard to kill. However, don't they kill a large number of legendary tier enemies at once? This divine artifact. They were definitely going to grab them. The smile on Zhou Zhou's face was very happy. Even though he was not lacking in low-tier deity-level divine artifacts now, however, if he could have a few more, dozens, or even hundreds of divine artifact mountains, he naturally wouldn't refuse. After that, Zhou Zhou and the Immortals returned to the galaxy and directly returned to the Night Empire. The Night Empire. After Zhou Zhou and the others returned, Lu Zhen brought his empire's god spirits and returned to the Divine Sword Empire through the spatial teleportation array. Zhou Zhou did not stay. After bidding farewell to Ji Yun, he returned to the Blazing Sun Kingdom with Heros, Zhe Wu, and Flower Sword Immortal. After returning to the Blazing Sun Kingdom, Zhou Zhou temporarily arranged for Flower Sword Immortal to stay in a luxurious guest room in Advanced Grade Lord's Paradise. Senior Flower Sword Immortal, please wait a moment. My capable person with the ability to revive has gone out to battle with my subordinates. He hasn't returned for the time being. Zhou Zhou explained. Carol Moeli was currently leading the army of clergymen and following Wu Xian. She was in charge of treating the wounded and would probably not be back until the evening. Flower Sword Immortal did not say anything and only nodded. Zhou Zhou nodded and left. As soon as he came out, he saw Aaliyah running over quickly. Behind her were Bai Yin, Qi Xiantian, Vicky, and Feng Luo. Greetings, Your Majesty. The three of them said respectfully. How was your trip? Zhou Zhou asked with a smile. We didn't let Your Majesty down. We've already completely taken over the 16 Kings Alliance. Currently, the 16 beginner kingdom lords of the Alliance of 16 Kings have all submitted to our country from top to bottom. Their territories have also become the territory of our Blazing Sun Kingdom. These are the 16 kingdom tokens of the 16 Kings Alliance. Bai Yin raised her hands respectfully. Right on the heels of that, a golden light flashed, and a total of 16 kingdom tokens floated in the air. When Zhou Zhou saw this scene, he could not help but smile even though he had strong self-control. He walked over and put away the 16 kingdom tokens with a wave of his right hand. At the same time, the moment he put away the kingdom token, a large number of dense and repetitive text notifications appear one after another. As there were too many of them and too many repetitions, Zhou Zhou looked at the last one. Cerulean Planet World Channel Lord Announcement. Congratulations to the Lord of the Blazing Sun for successfully breaking through a beginner Kingdom Lord faction. Reward, Reputation Rating +3. Cerulean Planet World Channel Announcement. Congratulations to the Lord of the Blazing Sun. Cerulean Planet World Channel Announcement. Congratulations to the Lord of the Blazing Sun. Lord Talent Notification. Congratulations, you have captured a kingdom and triggered the Diamond Tier Lord Talent. Embrace of the Conqueror. You have obtained the loyalty of 3 heroes with an extraordinary tier hero fate level slot, and 1 hero with an epic tier hero fate level slot. Note: They are rushing to your territory. Please note the latest new subject list. The Lord of the Inn class hint. You have destroyed a beginner kingdom level Lord faction and collected 5% of the power of the Law of the End. The grade of the Crown of the Final has increased by another step. Current collection progress of the power of the Final Law, 145%. You can upgrade the Crown of the Final. The Lord of the Inn class hint. You have destroyed a beginner kingdom level Lord faction and collected 100 points of Final Nirvana power progress. You can use 100 points of Final Nirvana power to exchange for a chance to revive after death and increase your strength greatly after revival. Current power of Final Nirvana, 1,600 points. Current number of resurrections, 9. The Lord of the Inn class hint. You have destroyed a beginner kingdom level Lord faction. A member of the Final Guard has received your summon. You can summon him. Current number of Final Guard members, 30 summonable. A smile appeared on Zhou's face after reading it. This time, Bai Yin led her troops to conquer the 16 Kings Alliance. First, he directly obtained 48 reputation rating points. In other words, 48 talents with reputation rating were about to come to his territory tomorrow. Secondly, with the enhancement of the Diamond Tier Lord talent, Embrace of the Conqueror, he would obtain 48 extraordinary tier heroes and 16 heroes with epic tier hero fate level slots tomorrow. Third, the number of times he could revive had also increased from 9 to 25. Fourthly, his Final Guard had increased by 16 from 14. He could summon a total of 30 Final Guards under his command. The fifth benefit was the Crown of the Final that had just been notified that it could be upgraded. At the thought of this, Zhou saw the Crown of the Final appear in his hand. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.